Hey guys. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was the Surgeon of Death. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 4, An Abnormal Day of Healing. Naruto took the time to knock Jiraiya out once he entered his operating room and then used the room to strip him of all his clothes. He was a professional after all, and he was not one to shy away from a male's naked body. So while Jiraiya was out, he took a blood sample, measurements of his body as well as his penis length, girth, and shape. Once he had all the information that he needed to know, he got the materials he needed to mix together to make the concoction that would enhance a man's penis size depending on what they wanted. Jiraiya had stated that he wanted his penis to become as big as physically possible, and he would do just that since the man was a paying customer, and he was a fan of his book. His body was capable of growing up to at least 10.5 inches in length with the girth that was the size of a soda can. So once the mixture was complete, he placed it into a syringe and held Jiraiya's penis before he stabbed it into the vein. As he pushed the plunger down, the size slowly grew as well until it reached the maximum amount that he was able to. Now that all was done, he replaced Jiraiya's clothes back onto his body before he took out a pill that he snapped under his nose. Doing so caused Jiraiya to wake up with a start. "Holy crap!" said Jiraiya in surprise, but then again he had not expected to be knocked out like he had been, so it was understandable. "Rise and shine, sleeping beauty," said Naruto with a chuckle. The operation was a success. "Already?" asked Jiraiya with a start as his hands went to his pants to feel his now enlarged appendage. "Well, hot damn! You truly work miracles as they say you do." "Well, I do the best I can," said Naruto with a smile and a shrug, "but now if you would be so kind as to pay me what is owed." Naruto then handed him a slip of paper that had the bill on it. Jiraiya took one look at it before he pulled out his wallet and handed Naruto the amount in full. This operation had been worth every cent. "Now to find myself a date and get me some sweet loving," said Jiraiya with a laugh as his confidence was boosted exponentially with the increase of his size. "I would advise against that," said Naruto with a shake of his head. "Your body needs to adjust to the growth in size. If you were to try and do what you plan to do, too much blood would flow into your genitals and you would faint due to it." "Wait a minute," said Jiraiya in shock, "so you are saying that you made it bigger but I can't use it?" "For the next several days at least," said Naruto as he walked over to his desk and grabbed 2 small bags with pills. "Now before you go, take these." "What are these?" asked Jiraiya as he took the drugs. "Pills to help you," said Naruto with a smirk. "The red ones will help regulate your blood flow until it happens naturally. The blue ones are essentially so you don't pop a stiffy until your body adapts." "Why would you give me those ones?" Naruto simply raised an eyebrow with a really look on his face. "Right," said Jiraiya with a slight laugh, "dumb question." "Yet before you go, I have a question for you," asked Naruto as he pulled out his cane and leaned on it. "Okay," said Jiraiya as he folded his arms, "shoot." "Do you know of a cloning technique that I can use?" "Why would you ask me that?" asked Jiraiya with a confused look on his face. "In my line of work," said Naruto with a sigh since he was speaking truthfully about the situation, "I am in high demand to help heal so many people. The problem with that is that I am only one man and so I have to go out and gather materials, and when I do that I can't heal people while I get the necessary materials. I tried using a cloning technique of my own that uses my bloodline, but since it is one made of my blood, the drawback to it is that I need the same amount of blood as a normal human being. I have been able to collect blood to do it, but it is fairly impractical in use. So I thought to ask you since you have been around and would most likely know one or two I could use. I assure you that it is not for anything nefarious, it's just so I can be in 2 places at once so that I can gather and heal at the same time." "Well," said Jiraiya as he thought about it for a bit. He knew of one specific clone jutsu, but it was one used solely by those who resided in Konoha, and even then it was used by their strongest members at that. Now at first he was against telling Naruto about it, but Naruto did make a good point about how it would aid him in his medical practice. "I do know of one that would help you. Now while I am capable of teaching it to you, I want your word that you will not use it against the shinobi of our village in any way." You have my word as the surgeon of death, said Naruto seriously. I only wish to use it to gather the materials I need to heal while still healing. I am a neutral party to all shinobi matters, so I only defend against those who attack me and do not seek out opponents to fight. I am a doctor, not a shinobi. Well then, said Jiraiya. He showed Naruto the proper hand signs to activate the Shadow Clone Jutsu, which Naruto copied and used himself. This put a smile on his face since he was being completely honest about his intentions for the jutsu, and with that he summoned a door and sent the clone he made through it to pay a visit to one of his friends he bought materials from. Now that he had a building, he could order large quantities to be delivered to said building. I thank you, said Naruto as he held his hand out to shake Jiraiya's hand. With this I will be able to heal so many more people. You are welcome, said Jiraiya as he saw Naruto summon up another door that led back to the village. But while we are on the subject, is there any way that I could convince you to join our village? Ha, laughed Naruto. He knew that there would be a few attempts to try and get him to settle down in the village. 1 out of 3 it seems. 1 out of 3, asked Jiraiya with a quizzical look on his face since that was quite the odd thing to hear out of the blue. Well, said Naruto as he thought about it for a second. Jiraiya may be a spy master for the village of Konoha, but there was no real harm in explaining what he meant since it wasn't really crucial, or even vital information. Allow me to explain a bit. Every time I enter any of the major villages, or sometimes even when I enter a minor one, the people there try no less than 3 times to try and get me to join up and set up shop there. But each time I decline their offers, and believe me when I say that they offer me a lot to stay. But why don't you settle down? Asked Jiraiya. It would make life easier for you since you would be safer in a village than on the road as a nomad. Medicine is a universal thing, said Naruto as he shook his head, and as such it is not limited to one place. I am a one-of-a-kind doctor who heals all who pay me, and since I am wandering about as a nomad my client list is far larger. Just how much money do you make? Asked Jiraiya, if you don't mind me asking you. More than I could possibly spend in one lifetime, said Naruto simply. This was true, since he had so many clients who paid, and even though there were those he helped for free out of the kindness of his heart, albeit with threats of harm if they ever tell people about it due to the act that he wanted to maintain his image, he still made so much. But he did not use most of that money for himself. He had 4 funds that he kept separate. One was used to buy ingredients as well as materials he needed to make his medicine. The second was the smallest, which he used for his own needs, which he simplified to food and clothes. He grew up poor and did not need much since that was how he was raised. The third was in an account that he left alone and only added to bit by bit. This one was saved for when he started a family in the future since raising one took money. The last one was the largest that he had under his name. The vast majority of the money he made was used to fund 14 different orphanages that were all over the elemental countries. He knew how it was to be without parents, and so he used his money to make sure those orphans got the things they needed, as well as free healthcare as they lived there. He had been doing this for the past 3 years, with each of them getting a renovation since they were in need of repairs, as well as eliminating the person in charge since they were all greedy assholes who were embezzling the money meant to help the children into their own accounts. Naruto found various trustworthy people to run the places and the children were happy. To them he was the big brother who they always wanted. While it was true that they may be orphans, with Naruto around they all truly felt as though they had family. But I have taken more than enough of your time, said Naruto as he opened the door and gestured Jiraiya to leave, and I must prepare myself for tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow? Word spreads fast in this village, said Naruto simply, so I will set up a small booth and help those who pay me. That's pretty much my day all tomorrow. Well, said Jiraiya with a smirk on his face. He was happy about the enhancement he had done to himself. He couldn't wait until he was able to get him some once these few days were up and his body adapted. He might just try his luck and go for Tsunade like old times. Who knows, she might just give in once she saw what he was now packing. Ah, what a day that would be! You have fun with that. Good luck. You too, said Naruto as he held out his hand to shake Jiraiya's. Jiraiya shook his hand and then left through the door. Naruto followed suit and sent the door away as he once more set out towards his hotel room. He stopped halfway when the memories of his clone flooded his mind. He didn't know that he would inherit the memories of the clone, since it was not the case with the blood clones he made. But in all honesty it only helped in the long run. But eventually he made his way to his room, This time he had one to himself while Kuratsuchi and Haku shared one. As he was brewing himself a cup of tea, he was unaware of a shinobi that entered the room under his own. This shinobi was one of Danzo's root forces, one that was a member of the Yamanaka clan. He had his orders, which were absolute. He was under the orders to wait for it to get late in the night, and when Naruto was at his most vulnerable, infiltrate his mind and implant the suggestions to settle down in the village of Konoha. The root shinobi got comfortable as he sat in his chair, as he patiently waited for the time when he would complete his order. Several hours later, Naruto was up and about late in the night. He had taken one of his anti-sleep deprivation pills to keep himself awake. He was in the process of developing a concoction that he planned to use in future, and he was having a breakthrough, so he didn't want to sleep and lose it. He had just finished writing down how to replicate the process for the future when out of nowhere he heard a knock on his door. At first he thought it was Haku, but that was unlikely since he had asked her to stay away while in this village. He had explained that this village, mainly Minato, would use any if any tactic to force him to remain within the village. So while here they were simply squad mates. So with his curiosity piqued, he made his way to the door and opened it up to see who it was. H would have looked through a peephole first, but hotel rooms don't have one, so he simply prepared the wires in his glove just on the off chance that this was an abduction attempt of some sort. But to his utmost surprise, it was not an ambush or an attack of any kind. In fact, the person standing there was the absolute last person he expected to see in this given situation. Standing there was the wife of Minato Namake's, Kushina Uzumaki. "Hello there," she said with a kind voice to try and ease the tension. "Sorry," said Naruto as the initial shock faded away, "but if you are here for medical purposes you will have to wait until tomorrow. I'll have everything prepared by then." "I didn't come for medical reasons," said Kushina with a slight wave of her hand. "Now that I have gotten a good look at you I can see you are in peak health," said Naruto. "But if you are not here for medical purposes, why are you here? May I come in?" "Well, sure," said Naruto as he waved her in and closed the door behind him. "Please tell me that this isn't a late-night booty call, because I am flattered, but I'm already taken." Kushina stopped mid-step for a second before she began to laugh at the random response. "No, that is not the reason I have come," said Kushina as she stopped laughing. "I would also like to state that I am a married woman." "You think that changes things," said Naruto with a sigh. "I have had a few offers from married women who have offered themselves as payment for my services or trying to get me to join their village." "And let me guess," chuckled Kushina. She was a mother who understood hormones, and since this man was most likely 16 years old, he was probably the type of guy to accept pussy thrown at him if offered. "You went along with it and still did not join." "No, on all accounts," said Naruto as he sat down in one of the chairs in his room, "since my mind is used more for science than the pleasures of the flesh. Don't get me wrong, I am no virgin. I am just not a whore, nor will I accept sex as a payment, since it does not pay the bills or for materials. But enough about that, why are you here?" "Truthfully," said Kushina with a serious face, "simple curiosity alone." "Curious as to what exactly?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Your parents," asked Kushina as he looked the young man in the eye to ensure that he spoke the truth. "Who were they?" "Why do you wish to know who my parents were?" asked Naruto with a bit of a glare. For some reason he did not like where this conversation was going. "You called my daughter your sister in Wave when she and her squad were there for a mission. I want to know why." "Is that all this is about?" said Naruto as he began to laugh hard. "Because I called her that? I only said that to get her off guard, and it worked." "Why did you need her off guard?" asked Kushina. "Her squad had nearly killed my friends," said Naruto simply, "so I distracted them long enough to get them to safety." "But still," said Kushina, who knew deep in her gut that there was more to this story than what was being told, "who were your parents?" "I only ever knew my mother," said Naruto sadly. "Her name was Mocha. She had no family other than me, and she died when I was only 5. She meant everything to me, and it nearly destroyed me when she passed away, so a simple word of warning, never disrespect her in my presence." "I mean no disrespect," said Kushina, "and I am sorry to hear that your mother passed on so soon. But who was your father?" "To be honest," said Naruto with a shake of his head, "I don't know who he is. He abandoned us to fend for ourselves, and I never met him in my life." "That must have been hard on such a young man like yourself," said Kushina in a motherly tone with sympathy since she actually cared, If it is any consolation, my homeland as well as the vast majority of my clan was killed off in the Second Shinobi War. So I know how it feels to lose family. I know that you are trying to be sympathetic, said Naruto with a sigh, but your clan was well known for their proficiency in seals and their strength. I was the son of an unknown man and a woman who people don't even know. Her tombstone has nothing more than the date of death along with her name. People will remember your family for years, and yet no one will remember mine. So please don't compare us since we are not alike. Well, I am sorry if I hit a sour note, started Kushina before she felt a pressure send a cold shiver up her spine. You came to my room in the middle of the night and demand to know who my parents were, growled Naruto. Family was a tender subject to him, and to be reminded that he no longer had one only infuriated him. For what? To mock me? To do as so many have in my youth and insult me for being worthless? I worked my ass off to get where I am today with my infamous reputation. I had no clan name to coast off of, and I made a name for myself. I meant no disrespect with my inquiry, said Kushina as she began to worry that Naruto would attack her out of the blue. Well, you have, said Naruto simply as he pointed to the door. Now leave me be. And warn your daughter that when we fight in these exams, I will hold nothing back. Those were the last words Kushina heard before the door was shut in her face. She could only stand there for a bit and wonder about the information that was just told to her. The main thing about him having an apparent vendetta against her daughter as well as the fact he was participating in the exams was something that shocked her. If this was the case, she needed to make sure that her daughter was prepared to fight against him, and so she set out to perform some intense last-minute training with her daughter. As she left, Naruto could only chuckle to himself since that had worked better than he had thought. He was not really pissed about what had been said. He just wanted Kushina to leave so as to end the conversation before she pried too deep into his history. He knew exactly who his father was, and he would make him pay dearly in the end. He took a few steps so as to pack up his tools as well as his books, but his body fell forward as his mind went blank. Mindscape. Naruto woke up with a headache. When he opened his eyes, he saw a massive hospital before him, and as he saw it he knew exactly where he was. Faust had always told him about organizing one's mind in a familiar setting, and a hospital was the place he was most familiar with. He knew the exact reason he was in his mind, and it only pissed him off immensely as he knew the reason. He always feared that someone would fuck with his mind like Ano did years ago in his youth, but unfortunately he had no means to make himself immune to the Yamanaka family jutsu. He had tried to find a means, and yet all he was able to do was develop a seal that would slow down the process so that he could expel the intruder of his mind out of it. While he was no master of sealing like the Uzumaki, he got by with what little he could do. He was strong-willed, this he had learned in time, so he was capable of doing so. His memories were represented as files like in any hospital that were located underground under lock and key, and he had the various rooms filled with the usual medical equipment, but were void of anything vital. He saw as a portion of the hospital's lights flickered out for a bit before the lights burned out. That was where the intruder was located, and his eyes turned to ones filled with rage as he summoned up a lever on the wall and pulled it hard. As he did, an alarm sounded throughout the facility, and the sprinklers activated. But the thing about these sprinklers was that they were not spraying water. It was blood. The intruder to his mind had spent what felt like hours searching for the location of Naruto's memories so as to complete his mission when he heard the alarm go off. This surprised him since he shouldn't have known that his mind was being invaded at all. But what made it worse was the fact that the sprinklers sprayed blood instead of water. He became drenched in the thick liquid, and as he became stuck in place for reason that he was not able to understand. So, said Naruto, who appeared near the man, and with a click of his fingers the lights returned to the area, "This is the man who invaded my mind." "How is this possible?" growled the man emotionlessly. "You should not be here." "Well, this is my mind," said Naruto with a growl of his own. He had a few encounters with shinobi who wore masks like this one before, and all he could get out of them was they were a member of Root, and nothing else. "So you should have thought of that before you invaded it." "You will serve my master," said the man. "You have no choice in the matter." "I would try and get information out of you," said Naruto as he pulled the mask off the man's face. And like all the other Root shinobi he had faced over the years, he was pale-faced and devoid of emotion. And just like the rest of them, he most likely had a seal on him to keep him from talking and divulging information. But it would be for nothing. Tell whoever your master is that I serve no man, and I never will. Naruto then used the blood surrounding him to form the curved blade on the edge of his cane to make a scythe. He then quickly decapitated the man, whose body dissolved once dead. Naruto growled as he snapped his fingers, which made all the blood disappear so that the place was clean as it was before all this happened. With a sigh, he quickly vanished from his own mind since his work was done, and the intruder was banished from his mind. The next day, Naruto had woken up early to get up and go find a good spot to set up his temporary shop. And since he had been born here, he knew exactly where he wanted to go put it, which was dead center in the village square, in plain view of anyone and everyone who came this way. He sat there for about 40 minutes before he got his first customer. The process was quite simple. The customer would talk to him about their problem they needed medical help for, and then depending on what was ailing them, Naruto would hand them the proper paperwork which they would then fill out. The paperwork helped to identify the exact problem they had, and then he would sign off on it and place the price in the box left blank for that exact reason. The first customer came to him since he had a severed muscle in his arm so that he could no longer use it. Naruto showed him the price, which he was paid, and the customer left happy that he was able to use both arms again. To be honest, the man was lucky since healing a severed muscle was cheaper than reattaching a severed limb. He could do it easily, but it still cost more. Once the man left, more people showed up to get aid such as he had. And within a few hours there was a crowd of people who appeared to fill out the proper paperwork. Out of all the people who came to see him this day, only 3 people really stood out. The first was Anko Mitarashi, the former student to the traitorous Sannin known as Orochimaru. "So I hear that you are the infamous surgeon of death," she said as she appeared while eating a stick of dango. "That I am," said Naruto with a chuckle. He had heard this said to him multiple times for years, as well as at least a dozen times today alone. "So what exactly can I help you with today?" "Well, I need help with a bit of a personal matter," said Anko sheepishly as she rubbed the back of her head. "So what STD do you want me to eliminate?" said Naruto with a smirk. He saw Anko look shocked as she heard him ask that before she began to growl. "I don't have an STD!" she shouted in anger. "Well, that's good to know," said Naruto with a smirk. "Do you hear that, men? She is clean!" Naruto heard men in the crowd begin to laugh as he said that since it was funny. But as they laughed, it only made Anko angry that she was being made fun of as well as being made out as some sort of whore. "I'll kill you for that!" shouted Anko in feminine rage. "Greater people have tried," said Naruto simply. "But all kidding aside, what can I do for you?" "Well, I hear you perform what many consider miracles," said Anko with a bit of a sad tone. "And to be honest, I have been trying to find someone who could help me for years and yet they could not. So I'm desperate at this point. Please tell me what is ailing you and I'll see what I can do to help you. When I was younger, my old teacher placed one of his curse seals on my body." "So you want to see if I can remove it?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow as he heard this. "Well, show me the mark and I'll tell you what I can do." Anko leaned her head over and pulled her coat down a bit to show the mark on her neck. Naruto placed a finger on it as he examined it closely. The chakra that was in his fingertips showed him enough to understand exactly what it was. Naruto looked for about a good minute before he pulled out one of his personal books he had filled with notes. "So can you do anything about it?" asked Anko hopefully. She truly wanted nothing more than to be rid of this accursed seal once and for all. All the hatred and ridicule were starting to leave their mark on her person. "Actually I can," said Naruto as he closed his notebook and sent it away for later. "Wait a minute," said Anko in surprise. To be honest, she didn't really believe that he would be able to help her. "Did you just say that you could help?" "Yes," said Naruto simple with a straight face. "In my career as a doctor, I have healed 11 different people with various curses on their person. Out of all of them, I only ever lost one, but that was because the curse was far more complex than I expected. Yours is not even that complex to understand, and so I can easily remove it. But I will need 3 things from you." "Anything," said Anko as she hopped in place all giddy-like. "I need about a pint of your blood, a month to prepare, and the money to pay for the operation." "Whatever the price," she said happily, "I'll eagerly pay." "Well, you are lucky that I am not an asshole who would abuse that fact," said Naruto as he pulled out his book of prices. He flipped through the book and showed her the exact price that would be due once the operation was complete. She saw that it was a bit steep, but she could afford it since her job paid so very well. Naruto had her sit in a chair so that he could poke her vein with a needle so as to extract the blood he needed. Once he gathered it up, he placed it into a small metallic case and walked through his door so as to put it in the freezer along with the rest of the blood. She hugged him hard after he came back out, and then left to do her own thing for the day. The second person, or people he should say since there were two of them, who were ones he remembered were two people he never thought he would see in person. Naruto had been in the process of handing some pills to an older man who had some erectile problems when out of the blue two people, a young man as well as a young woman, had appeared out of nowhere and shoved her out of the way. They were both wearing what one would consider crimson-colored regal clothes. Naruto was already getting a bit of a headache from just their arrogant attitude alone. The man had short-cut hair, but the thing that people were drawn to was the fact that his left eye was scarred from what seemed to have been a fire jutsu of some sort. The female had her hair tied up via 2 needles, and to be honest, out of the two of them, she was obviously the more arrogant one. Naruto stood up and helped the man to his feet before he handed him the pills that were prescribed to him. The two noble people glared as he ignored them to help another who they deemed as a filthy commoner. "Hello," said the woman as she stood there arrogantly. "If you haven't noticed," said Naruto as he finally turned around to acknowledge them, "there is a line. So if you are here for medical help, you must wait your turn." "Do you have any idea who we are?" asked the man with a growl. "Not one clue," said Naruto truthfully, since he had never seen them before. "Such arrogance," said the woman in a rude manner, since everyone in Fire Country should know who they were. They were a family that was just below the Fire Daimyo and their family in hierarchy. "Everyone knows who we are." "I don't," said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders. "We are Zuko and Azula of the Cain noble family," said the now named Azula. "Wait a minute," said Naruto as he froze in place when he heard those names. "What were your names again?" "Azula and Zuko Cain." In that moment, it took all the self-control he possibly had to remain calm and quell the rage that was inside of him. He had remembered those names with crystal clarity from his mother's journal. These two were his aunt and uncle. The same aunt and uncle who made his mother's childhood a harsh one, since she did not see the world through the same arrogant eyes as their family did. The journal had gone into great detail of the bullying that they had inflicted upon her, with Zuko breaking the things she cherished and Azula tormenting her on an emotional level to make her feel worthless. Every fiber of his being was telling him to tear them to pieces and make them suffer as they had done to his mother when she was no more than a teenager. But if he did that, he would be a wanted man in the bingo books for killing such a noble family. If he was going to get back at them for what they had done, he would do so in his own way that no one would be able to backtrack to him. "Noble or not," said Naruto simply, since he didn't want his voice laced with rage of any sort, "there is still a line ahead of you." "Fine," sighed Azula angrily, "how much to skip the wait?" "It is not about the money," said Naruto simply, as he stood firm, "it's about the principle of the matter. You can't bribe your way here." "Do you not understand how nobility works, you worthless commoner?" screamed Azula as Zuko held her back so she wouldn't do something stupid as she was known to do against those who piss her off. Several maids and butlers within their home had been the subject of such cruelty, so he knew what she was capable of. "Worthless commoner," said Naruto as he got into her face. He was not scared of her, nor would he ever be. "Well, that's rich coming from the nobles who came to seek my aid. You think that you are better than the rest of us, but the reality is that we all function the same. We all have the same weaknesses, and money cannot change that. So if all you came to do was insult me, then leave. Or else get your noble bitch ass to the end of the fucking line and wait like the rest of these people." At this point, Zuko let Azula go since Naruto had insulted him as well, and he actually wanted Azula to fuck him up at this point. She pulled out a dagger to stab him, since she knew that her family had the money and the influence to get away with it. This wasn't the first time she had done this, nor would it be the last. Yet when she went to stab him in the head for his insolence, Naruto simply held his hand up to block the blade. It stabbed through his palm, to which he then yanked it out of her grasp. "You seem agitated," said Naruto with a straight face. With a sleight of hand he whipped out a syringe filled with a powerful sedative. He simply stabbed her in the arm with it, and it took immediate effect for it to work since she fell over unconscious. "You filthy," started Zuko before he stopped mid-sentence. Naruto had another syringe in his hand with the intent to use it if he got violent. "Take your sister and wait like everyone else," said Naruto simply. Zuko simply nodded in shock that he was being threatened like this. He picked his sister up and walked back to the end of the line as Naruto told him. Naruto waited a minute to make sure they did before he took the handle of the dagger in hand and pulled it out. Once the wound was no longer plugged up with the dagger, his blood retracted back into the wound and reformed the skin so that there was no visible damage done to it. His blood ability helped him to heal from such things perfectly like this, and it was useful to say the least. Zuko, though, was back at the front of the line within 5 minutes though, and it made Naruto sigh to see that his arrogance was like this. "What did I just say all of 5 minutes ago?" growled Naruto. "You said that I couldn't bribe you," said Zuko haughtily, "so I bribed the rest of these commoners to skip past them instead." Naruto leaned his head a bit, and saw a few people counting some money in their hands. "Fucking smartass," said Naruto under his breath. "Alright then, what can I do for you?" "We came to this village to hire Tsunade for her medical knowledge," said Zuko, "but we happened to hear that you were here and decided to hire you instead since your abilities in the medical field are far superior to hers." "And yet you just called me a filthy commoner not 5 minutes ago," said Naruto simply, "but I'm not going to argue with you. What do you need?" "Our father is gravely ill," said Zuko as he handed Naruto a scroll with the insignia of the Cain family, which was a black fire. "And he needs a heart transplant if he is going to live." "So I take it that you have the donor heart ready to be transplanted?" asked Naruto. "That we do indeed," said Zuko. The heart had come from one of their butlers, one their father had hired for this exact purpose since he knew he would need fresh organs of some sort. The young man had no family other than his sick elderly mother, and he was happy to serve what he assumed was a good man since the job paid well and the money he earned he sent home to take care of her. The man worked there for 2 months before he was killed and his organs harvested. And to make sure there were no loose ends, their father had hired a shady man to kill the woman so that no one would look for her son. "Okay then," said Naruto as he opened the scroll. "It was an official invitation to their home in the Fire Capital. I can be there in at least a week." "We need you sooner than that." "Well, tough shit," said Naruto. "I have things I have planned to do, so that is the earliest I can help you." "Then we shall hire Tsunade instead." "Go right ahead," said Naruto with a shrug, "but that will take even longer. From what I have been able to hear from all the people who I have helped, she is not even in the village. She is on one of her gambling tours, as people call it, and won't be back for a few weeks since she just left a few days ago. So even if you were going to hire her, then all that would happen is that she would get a message requesting her aid and then most likely ignore it, since from what I hear she does not like her gambling time to be interrupted. So by all means go right ahead and hire her." "Fine," said Zuko through strained teeth. "We expect you as soon as possible." "I'll be there," said Naruto, "but have my money ready or else there will be no operation. I have dealt with Welchers before and I am familiar with how to deal with them." This time Zuko left for good since their business was done. And then Naruto once again helped those who came to him for medical aid. And to be honest, the money that they were bribed with helped tie their fees. Nothing else happened as the day went by, and it was only when he was packing everything up that he met another person who he had expected to see. It was Minato Namikaze himself, standing there with a grin on his face. "So you are the infamous surgeon of death I have heard so much about in the last couple of years," said Minato with a smirk. He had Danzo send one of his root shinobi to alter Naruto's mind so that when he himself arrived to offer him a chance to join their village, that Naruto would jump at the chance eagerly. He had heard nothing back from the root shinobi, but since Naruto was no Yamanaka nor was he proficient in seals, he would not be able to counter a mental attack. "And you are the infamous Yellow Flash Minato Namikaze," said Naruto as he had yet to turn around. He was doing inventory to make sure he had everything and to see exactly what he needed to order more of. "So what brings you here now? If you are here for medical purposes, then you will have to wait until tomorrow since I am closed for the moment." "No, I am not in need of medical aid," said Minato with a wave of his hand. "I am here to personally offer you the chance at joining our village. I even have the paperwork with me so that we can get that out of the way here and now." "No," said Naruto. He didn't stop with his inventory for even a second as he said that, since he knew exactly what he wanted to say as a response. "Well then, all I need is your signature," said Minato on autopilot before Naruto's response finally sunk in. "What?" I said no. Naruto then closed his book since he was done with inventory and began to carefully pack up his gear. "How is this possible?" said Minato to himself, since the root shinobi should have been successful. "How is what possible?" asked Naruto as he placed the last bit of equipment. Nothing, said Minato to shut down that train of thought before it got too deep. But is there anything that Konoha could offer you to have you stay and set up shop within this village? We are considered the strongest out of all 5 major villages. Stop preaching to me, said Naruto as he finally turned around to face the man and look him in the eye. Your village has nothing more than the other major villages, and they have all tried to get me to settle down within it as well. But I prefer to remain a nomad and heal all who pay me to do so. But let's just stop all that and talk man to man, me and you. And just what exactly do you mean by that? Asked Minato with a serious look on his face. I know exactly who you are, said Naruto with a glare towards the man who was responsible for so much of his pain. And it humors me greatly to see the same man who wouldn't even acknowledge my existence years ago now is trying so very hard to settle down in a village that I have nothing but the worst of memories of. So you know the truth then, said Minato with a growl. He had hoped that Naruto would never learn about their relationship to each other. And now he would have to use a Yamanaka to erase that knowledge from his mind once Naruto was part of their village. Hard not to know, said Naruto as he folded his arms. I got your hair color as well as your eyes. I am a doctor and I perfectly understand genetics. So if you know the truth, asked Minato with a raised eyebrow, why would you refuse an offer to remain with family? Family, said Naruto with anger-laced words through strained teeth. You dare claim to be such a thing to me? You who abandoned us when we had nothing? You who left us to die without a shred of aid to sustain us? You who, when the woman who you had a child with came to you and begged you on her hands and knees to aid us, you slapped her and threatened not only her life but my own as well? You were willing to harm a child to keep your secret, and now that the child who you sired has made a name for himself, do you seek him out when years ago you personally signed the paperwork to hinder his chances at doing just that in the first place? So you know the truth, huh, you little brat? Asked Minato before he whistled. From out of the blue, a dozen root shinobi appeared. Minato didn't want to go down this road, but his first plan didn't work, so he went with plan B and was just going to abduct him and brainwash him in the root facility below the village. 2 out of 3, said Naruto as he cracked his neck. So this is your grand plan? To kidnap me? Listen here, you little brat, said Minato with a glare in his eyes. You have one of 2 options here. You can either come quietly to begin your re-education to become a citizen of Konoha, or you could fight my men here, and if you manage to kill them you will be placed within the bingo book with such a high price that even your own customers will turn on you to try and turn you in for the reward. Either way you will serve our village. Is that what you think? Asked Naruto as pulled out a bottle filled with blood. But you do not know who I am friends with. And that matters why? Asked Minato with a raised eyebrow. In my career as a doctor, I have helped many people of political influence from multiple countries. I have helped even daimyos themselves, 7 to be exact, with 3 of them being from major countries while the others are from minor. I have befriended them all, not for personal gain, but because they are nice people and I like to get to know my patients better so I know how to help them. They know who I am since they too have gotten to know me on such a personal level. Now if you did what you said you would and placed me in the bingo book, it would only really affect me in Fire Country since the other countries would not do it. And by doing that you are basically blacklisting me from Fire Country, which while it would be a bit of a financial loss, it's not the end of my career since there will always be sick people wherever I go. That changes nothing, said Minato as he was a few seconds away from ordering his men to capture Naruto. Oh, but it does, said Naruto with a sinister grin on his face, since if you try and capture me like you are doing, then I will simply kill your men and leave this village and not return. He said that, but in his mind he knew that he would have to return to help Anko since he said he would cure her curse seal and he was a man of his word. And if I do that, then I will let the world know exactly why I left. They will know that the boy who was abandoned before he was born by his father is now being hunted by the man who abandoned him now that he made a name for himself. The world will know who you truly are, and they will not see you as a hero of Konoha, but as the monster that we both can plainly see you are hiding from the public. Minato was growling in rage at this point since he did not like to be challenged, and by someone like Naruto who he saw as a brat. This would not stand. Do you really believe that you can defeat so many of my men by yourself? Asked Minato. Funny that you should ask that, said Naruto as he raised his gloved hand and bent his fingers a bit inwards. As he did that, Minato heard the clear sounds of men choking and turned around to see the root shinobi all grasping their necks as trickles of blood ran down their necks. Since I actually can and do it quite easily if I need to. What? Asked Minato in shock that his men were subdued so easily like this. How is this possible? You were trained to fight like a shinobi, the same way anyone has been trained with the exception of samurai, said Naruto as he tightened his grip with the wires that were wrapped around their throats. But I was trained to fight like a doctor, who no one has been trained to counter in their lifetime. That gives me the edge to do such things like this. So you have two choices here, the first being that you leave me alone and take your men with you. Or the second is that I kill your men and disable you so that you still leave me alone. While I hate you with every fiber of my being, I won't kill you. Oh, said Minato sarcastically enraged that this brat thought that he could kill him so easily, and why the fucking sudden change of heart? Because I don't want you to die yet, said Naruto with a glare. You took everything from me. My childhood, my mother, and even tried to ruin my future when you denied me the chance to join the academy. You would have tried to hurt my daughter in rage of what I did to you. No, I wouldn't, said Naruto simply. I would have hurt her since your daughter is a bitch who also added to my pain in our youth. You should be proud, since she takes after you so very well. Don't you dare insult my daughter. And don't you dare attack your son, you hypocritical narcissist. So are you gonna be a good boy and leave me the fuck alone, or should I scar you up to the point that you can't hide your shame from the world? Minato growled since this was not part of the plans at all. It should have been a simple acceptance of his offer to join the village, since the root Yamanaka shinobi should have been successful in his mission. Once a member of their village, they would have used the CRA to begin a new clan of highly advanced medics with Naruto's abilities. Sure, there would have been the meeting with the other members to discuss such a matter, but with the reasoning being Naruto's blood-using ability, which he still had no idea as to how he had that ability since it was not a known one, it wouldn't have been a problem and there would have been no objections of any sort. But in the end he begrudgingly signaled for his men to retreat, and the second he did the wires around their necks retracted. This isn't over, boy, said Minato in rage as he made to leave, for in the end you will serve this village. You are right about this not being over, said Naruto with a smirk, since I will make you suffer as I have for years. I will take everything that you love from you, so that you know my pain. Those words caused Minato to stop and turn around to look at Naruto with a glare filled with murderous intent. Stay away from my family, he said with venom-laced words, or I will show you that there are fates worse than death, brat. Funny, said Naruto with a chuckle, I was about to say those exact words to you. Looks like I am your son after all if we think so alike. This pissed Minato off more than before, but he disappeared in a swirl of leaves before he attacked Naruto in a fit of rage. Naruto could only laugh as he saw the infamous Minato tuck tail and run like that. But his laughter was short-lived when his mind was once again breached, and his body fell forward unconscious. But this time was different since there were more root shinobi involved since the plan was to capture him when he was in this state. Yet their plan was not going to go the way they wanted since Naruto had prepared for this. He knew that they would try to use a Yamanaka again, so he summoned a crow and asked for their aid in escaping if it happened again. They offered their full support as well as more when asked. A single crow had been watching Naruto all day, and the moment that they saw the Yamanaka use his mind possession jutsu they took action. A swarm of them attacked the Yamanaka and carried him towards the door to Naruto's operating room that was still summoned, and then used their unique jutsu to transform his body into a flock of crows as well to bring him back to the room as well. Once inside, the door disappeared. All had gone according to plan. Chapter 5: A Bloody Start. A wise man once said that when one makes a plan that you should think 3 moves ahead of your opponent, and this was a bit of advice that Naruto had taken to heart most of his life when he had decided to leave the village of Konoha to seek his destiny in life elsewhere. Making a plan was fairly easy when you know so much about the ones you are making it against. So when the Yamanaka invaded his mind in an attempt to try and brainwash him into serving Konoha against his own free will, and failed to accomplish his mission, he knew that whoever sent the man in the first place would try again. It was true that he had no clue as to when that secondary invasion of his mind would happen, but he did plan for it ahead of time because in truth he wanted it to happen. For years he had used a blood clone, the second one he ever made since the first one was imperfect, to study the brain thoroughly. He had hundreds of books on the subjects, the brains of the foolish shinobi who tried to hurt him into compliance since the removal of the organ would leave said person dead. But since he killed those people it was not a problem since they were dead already. While Naruto would never admit it to anyone, not Faust, his own mother, or even his closest of friends and girlfriend, he had only one true fear in life. While on the outside he was a calm, collected person of a man unless provoked by an enemy of any kind, but that fear had been with him for years. His greatest fear was the loss of his memories, and by that he meant either through natural illness or via alteration like the Yamanaka was capable of doing with their fucking family jutsu. He feared about it at first because he saw what it could do to haunt you when he suffered nightmares because of Ino until he was 9. But nowadays that fear was only increased due to the fact that if he forgot what he knew then he would not be able to help others anymore since no one had his powers that he had been gifted when he ate the fruit he had as a young lad. This was why he did so much medical research, so that he could teach it to others so that there would be other doctors to heal when his time in this world was up. Sure, they would not be able to do everything he was capable of, seeing that his powers were one of a kind, but they would be the closest things to it if shown how. So he had spent so much time trying to find a means to counter such a thing from happening, and what made it even better was the fact that there were those who were suffering memory loss as well who volunteered to try out his procedures to see if they could be cured. Now while he wished he could say that he got it right and they were all good and healthy, that was not the case and he had so many failures under his belt before he finally reached a breakthrough and found a cure. It was slow since it was basically reconstructing what had eroded over time, but he finally found the means to and it made all the trial and error worth it in the end. The saving grace to the failures was that those he failed didn't suffer. Yet while he had made a scientific miracle of a breakthrough with curing memory-losing illnesses, he was still vulnerable to those damn Yamanaka and their fucking jutsu. He would always remember the nightmares, since even though he no longer suffered from them the memories would always linger. His bullies had so enjoyed making his life miserable, mainly since the action of putting him down made them feel better about themselves since their arrogance was never stomped out by their parents, so it was still there. Yet no matter what pain they put him through he rose above it with the aid of his mother, whose love was the main force of his will to continue on with his life. When she died, it was his rage against the very man who sired him into this world only to deem him worthless, and tried to end him as well. So every time they saw their punching bag up and about once again, it only pissed them off and began the process of hurting him all over again. None of them ever figured out how he constantly kept coming back when they belittled him save for one. Ino. To many who saw her, she was a nice young girl going through a bit of a fangirl phase with her fawning over Sasuke Uchiha. But that image was only a small fraction of the truth since in reality she was one of the cruelest in that group of people, with only Naruto herself beating the two of them when it came to cruelty. She had followed him one night as he limped home, bleeding out of various spots with bruises and even more. She saw how Naruto's mother bandaged him up and spread healing ointment on his bruises. She saw how happy he was as she held him close and told him everything would be fine in the end. She then put him to bed and read a chapter of his favorite book to help him go to sleep, and as he dreamed pleasant dreams, Ino had rubbed her hands together and smirked since she now knew his weakness. The next day she had followed the two of them as Naruto followed his mother to work, and when she went to do her job leaving Naruto in the main lobby, that was when Ino struck. She had learned her family jutsu a few months ago, and had been dying to try it out on someone. So with the proper hand signs she had infiltrated his mind and had begun to add false memories in the part of it that would affect his sleep. The nightmares were all the same with slight variations which were simply his mother claiming to hate him as well as joining in on his pain as the others hurt him. This was the nightmare that plagued him till he was 9. And if it took the rest of his life he would get her for doing this since it was only after he left the village that he realized that she was the cause behind it since he had no fears about his mother, and she was the only one of the group of his bullies to have such an ability to implant it into his mind. Now here he was with the perfect specimen to initially unlock the means to make himself immune to the Yamanaka. He knew that he would never be able to just up and kidnap one since he was not a monster like that. He was a doctor that did many inhuman things in the pursuit, that was true, but he was not going to commit crimes to get test subjects like that. This one was perfect since this one had attacked him first, so it was clearly self-defense. Plus whoever this guy was part of an underground organization, this he knew since he was a member of Root. While he had no idea as to who ran the organization, he had fought enough of them to at least know their name. So with those factors in play, there was no backlash for what he planned to do. But that was later since now Naruto was once again in his mind since it had been invaded yet again. Naruto stood for the second time in the past 24 hours upon the precipice of the hospital that symbolized his mindscape. Now, while he was fairly certain that the intruder had no way to counter his defenses like last time he was here, but he was just too pissed to even make the effort at this point. So he conjured up a simple switch that connected to a button that floated next to him. He flipped the switch, which then powered up the button that he immediately pushed once he saw the green light that showed that it had been powered up. The moment he pushed the button, a blaring alarm sounded throughout the building before all the lights shut off. The intruder, to his mind, stopped in his tracks when he saw this and immediately began to look around, since the last time the light went off while he was here he had been attacked and decapitated. The action of which evicted him out of Naruto's mind before he could complete his mission. Yet this time Naruto hadn't even entered the building, and instead the entire place exploded in a geyser of blood that once more killed the man invading his mind. He woke up in the real world with a bit of a headache, but then again he essentially flushed his mind by doing what he did, so it was bound to hurt like it did. Luckily for him, he came to before the routine did, who was still covered in the crows that had dragged him into the operating room. Naruto quickly pulled a syringe out of its packaging and extracted a powerful paralysis drug so that he could not move his body, and stabbed him in the arm and pushed the end of it down to inject it into the man's blood. Once he did, he sighed a breath of relief, since the unorthodox plan he had concocted had gone far better than he had possibly thought that it would when put into action. He thanked the crows for their aid in the plan, which they called their acknowledgement of his praise before they poofed back to their summoning realm. He picked the man up and placed him on the operating table, where he then strapped him down tight so that when the drugs eventually wore off, then he could still not escape. "I know you can't speak," said Naruto as he walked over to the door of the cabinet where he kept all his medical tools once he sterilized them so that they could be used again later. He took out the ones he was going to need, as well as a 4 needle and a bag to collect some blood. "So I'll not ask question when I know for a fact that the drug I injected you with prevents you from talking back. You were an absolute dumbass of an idiot to try and enter my mind for the second time after I warned you against it. Yet now that you tried yet again when I stated that I serve no one, you find yourself in this particular situation. You see, I have been waiting for the chance to pick the brain of a Yamanaka like you, and since you attacked my mind twice, I am able to do it without issue. So allow me to explain what I am going to do. I am going to dissect your head and remove your brain, and then I am going to tear it apart so that I full grasp how your clan does as they do with the mental invasions. Then I am going to find a means to counter it forever so that your clan can't fuck with my mind again. So rejoice, since your death will be in the name of science, and means something other than to die for a pointless cause such as enslaving an unwilling person." Naruto then walked over and put on his thick gloves that he used for this sort of thing, since it was a far messier procedure than usual. Once he had them on, he clicked his fingers to set up a room. Once activated, Naruto smirked as he used a knife to make the first cut into his unwilling test subject. 15 hours later, Naruto had finally done what he had set out to do. He wiped the sweat off his forehead, since this had been quite a challenge to complete, and even more so to apply it to himself. He had found that genetic mutation that let the Yamanaka do as they did, and once there he did thousands of tests with various results until he found the perfect one that he wanted to apply. With the formula completed, he mixed it up perfectly, and then used his blood clone to strap him down with a tightened strap for his head so it could not move in the slightest, as well as kept his eyes open. The formula had to be injected at an upward angle through the bottom of his left eye into the part of the brain that it needed to be. The pain was excruciating, with his screams echoing throughout the room. But the pain only increased even more so when the plunger was pressed down and the formula was injected into his brain. Once the syringe was extracted and the straps removed, he held his eye in an attempt to try and ease the pain in some manner, which it didn't at all. He felt like his head was on fire for what seemed like hours, yet it was only minutes before the pain finally stopped. His body had broken out in a massive cold sweat, and he laid down on his back for a bit to get his strength back, since the procedure had taken a lot out of him. Once he could get to his feet, he had his blood clone do the standard full physical he always gave himself when he modified himself in some way, shape, or form to ensure that he was still healthy. Once he was given the okay from himself, he conjured up the door to his hotel room so as to sleep this all off, and as he did, his blood clone completed his final task before he dispelled, which was to dispose of the body after harvesting the rest of the usable organs for future donors, and burned the rest of it away. 3 days later, Naruto woke up refreshed as he got ready for the day him and his friends had waited for the past few days. He smirked since he was honestly looking forward to this day, and he was looking forward to doing something else besides healing people. Sure, that was his calling in life, but he could still enjoy other things as well. So after he finished getting clean, he put on the new outfit he had paid a tailor to make him, and wanted to wear it on a special occasion such as this. His new outfit was a lot like his last one but with a different design. He wore the same hat, but that was because it was special in many ways that had yet to be revealed as of yet. He wore a red short-sleeved t-shirt under a jet black button-up sleeveless vest. He wore dress pants with two crisscross crimson belts with a skull buckle on the front that had a chain attached to the pocket which itself was attached to an antique watch that he had been given as payment a while back from an elderly man who had no physical cash. It worked fine and the design on the outside fit his attire perfectly since on it was the carved-out image of the Shinigami. He wore thick black dress shoes which themselves were custom-made and unique. Yet what made his attire perfect was the symbol that was emblazoned onto the back of his attire in white. In the years that Naruto had been taught by Faust in the medical field, the man had come to help him understand his powers far better than he could have ever learned himself if he had tried to do it on his own. Faust was a well-traveled man who had done so much and seen so many things in his long extended lifetime, so much in fact that Naruto had questioned if Faust was immortal, but he was never given an answer to that question. Faust had left Naruto alone for a few days to obtain something that could help him since he remembered it from a while back. And what he returned with was simply two books, one a journal and the other a book on the subject of the powerful force he was capable of using known as Haki. He had learned that there were various types, and while they would have been useful in his life, he had only one instead of all the more common ones. His was known as Conqueror's Haki, said to be used by 1 in a million at the time when it was more frequent, which made him question how he had been given this power at all since Haki seemed to have died out. But that bit of information was minuscule in retrospect of the information contained in the journal. It was very old and as such he took the utmost care to keep it intact so as to preserve it. It was written by the man who himself had the power of the cursed fruit he had eaten, and it was quite a coincidence that he had the same nickname that Naruto himself was given for his actions. The name of the man? Trafalgar Law. This man had been a pirate captain of his era which had long since passed, and had been an amazing doctor the likes that no one else could ever hope to become with his skills. His journal had extensive knowledge on his abilities and various unorthodox procedures as well that Naruto practiced and used himself. So in honor of the man not only whose name he had acquired but his power as well, he emblazoned the symbol the man once used for his flag on his ship onto his back. In a way the man had been reborn through him, and he would make the man proud. And judging by what the man wrote in the journal about his own quest for vengeance against the man who killed the man who saved his life, he had a feeling that Law would encourage him in his efforts. With his new clothes on his person, he left the room and pulled out his cane as he walked by his teammates' room. He used the end of the cane to tap the door several times, which caused them to come out as well since they were ready to go, and had just been waiting for him to knock. They both took a look at him and blushed since in their minds he looked fairly handsome as well as sharply dressed. Then once they were done blushing they followed him along to the academy where the test was taking place. Not much happened on the way there except for most of the other applicants looking at how he was dressed since it was not shinobi attire in any sense of the word. But then again Naruto didn't care since he was not a shinobi. There had been a bit of confusion with many of the people who were trying to enter a classroom yet were being denied entrance by two men who were there to try to deter them away. But the trick of the whole thing was that the test was on the next floor up, not this one. Naruto simply held his finger up to his lips to tell the girls to keep silent about it, and kept walking towards the proper room. Once there they were greeted by the combined killing intent of multiple shinobi from various villages. Naruto simply sighed since he had to make a point to these people that he was not one to be underestimated. So with a serious look on his face, he blasted his Haki throughout the room. The mysterious energy made all within the room fall to their knees in a cold sweat. They looked at Naruto in a new light, and realized that he was more of a threat than they thought. The three of them then stood off to the side and waited for those who would show up before the official test starts. And like he assumed the rookies of Konoha all showed up, along with a few more that he didn't even know were here like the Suna team that consisted of all three of the Kazekage's children. It was shortly afterwards that the test began, with the warning to not cheat on the written test portion of it. Naruto didn't care honestly about that and answered the questions with nonsense answers. He was never trained as a shinobi, so of course he wouldn't know the actual answers. Plus the fact that he was doing all this just to test himself, not to advance his position, since doctors had no ranks. Multiple people were caught cheating and eliminated, but it was only near the end that something out of the ordinary happened. The person in charge of this portion of the test got up and told them of a final question that if they failed to get right would mean they would be stuck as a genin forever, which once again Naruto didn't care about since he was a doctor. So after all that was said and done and the written portion of the test was done with, Anko had bust through the window and told them to get their asses to the forest of death for the next portion of the exams. They arrived at the place and were told to sign legal waivers that made it so the village would nor could they be held accountable for anything that happened, such as injury or death. Naruto had filled out the form and handed the form to Anko, who had stopped him for a second and then handed him a stack of bills as well as a scroll with the kanji for Earth on it. He pocketed the money since it was the full payment for the procedure he was going to perform on her when everything was ready. He thanked her for the money and assured her that there was a money-back guarantee if things didn't go as they should. She simply smiled and thanked him for actually trying to help her, which no one else was trying anymore. The rules of the second part of the exam were simple. There were 2 different types of scrolls that were handed out to those participating. They had to have one of each of them before they made their way to the center tower, and then there they would pass. So with the instructions being fully clear, the teams all went to their own gates and saw them open so that they could head inside to start the test. Naruto and his team had charged in, all while expecting to be attacked at any given point since it was expected at this point. But to their surprise there was none. For 2 whole days there was nothing, either when they traveled or while the girls slept, while he kept watch after popping one of his pills to stay awake so they could get some sleep. It was only on the 3rd day that they finally met another team, which turned out to be Squad 10 with Choji, Ino, and Shikamaru. Why, asked Naruto with a sigh, out of all the people we could have possibly faced in these exams, were you people the first ones we meet? Troublesome, said Shikamaru, who had to agree with Naruto's statement. Shikamaru had heard about Naruto via rumors around town about the Surgeon of Death, and if any of them were even a fraction of the truth then this would not end well for his squad, so if they wanted to get out of this unscathed then they would have to play this smart. Finally we get to actually fight someone, said Kuratsuchi in joy since the last few days had been boring. It wouldn't have been so bad if Naruto had not brought his girlfriend so she could use her time to try and seduce Naruto while here. But since Haku was not only here but in a relationship with the man she wanted or herself, that was not possible. Hold up, said Shikamaru as he held up his hands to try and calm the situation down. Maybe we can come to some sort of trade-off and leave as strangers. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Choji as he ate chips. We can take these guys. Choji, said Shikamaru with a sigh, listen to me when I say that you do not want to fight that man as we are right now. He is known as the Surgeon of Death and has been known to kill far more powerful shinobi. I'm glad that someone in your group knows about who I am, said Naruto with a smirk as he held his cane out towards them. And so what was this about a trade-off I heard about? What scroll do you need? We have extras. We need a heaven scroll, said Naruto simply. Shikamaru pulled the scroll they needed out and tossed it to them. You are lucky that I am not like the rest of you, since once paid I do as I am paid to do. I accept your payment, so move along and pray that we don't meet like this again since you don't have anything else we need on you. They took the hint and left the immediate area once told. Why didn't you let yous fight them? Asked Haku in a voice that all but demanded that he explain himself, or there would be hell to pay. He knew this tone very well since there was a date night he missed, and had no good excuse for. He had no idea that Haku had such knowledge about acupuncture points to paralyze a person, but he did now once she hit him with so many of them and left him there. Apparently icicles in the bloodstream were a weakness of his and he was very happy that she was the only one who could use such abilities. It's because you will need your strength for what is to come, said Naruto simply as he began to walk forward, but he stopped after taking a few steps. He looked at the scrolls in his hands for a minute before he tossed them to Haku to hold on to. Why are you giving these to me? Asked Haku with a raised eyebrow. You guy head along to the tower, said Naruto as he looked around for a minute. There is a weed I wish to pick while here for research purposes, and now seems like the perfect time to acquire it since we are already here. Okay, said Haku with a kind smile on her face. If there was one thing she knew about her boyfriend besides his cock size and his desire to protect those he held close by any means possible, was that when he wanted to go and collect something for research purposes there was no deterring him from doing so. So she as well as Kuratsuchi made their way to the center tower to end their part in this portion of the exam. Naruto could only smile since he was glad he found a woman to love who understood him like she did. But that smile disappeared not too long after they had left. "I know that you are there," said Naruto with a sigh, "so there is no use trying to hide from me." He waited for a minute, but no one came out to greet him, which slightly ticked him off about it. So he opened his hand as if to stretch his fingers for a bit. He then swiped the air with his arm. Doing so caused the wires in his gloves to slice the trees surrounding him into sections of various sizes. "Such a temper for someone so young," said a snake-like voice as a figure emerged from the rubble. "You should take a few deep breaths and calm yourself." "I am a doctor," said Naruto with a smirk, "so I know what I need to relax. I don't need a second opinion from a stranger. And especially not from the snake Sannin Orochimaru himself." "Oh ho," said the now-named Sannin as he walked towards Naruto, but remained a bit of a distance away from him to be on the safe side. "So it would seem that even the so-called surgeon of death has heard of me. Hard not to hear about a man that does such horrific experiments to people," said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders. "Plus I was born here so I know about you." "So a native citizen of Konoha is the infamous surgeon," chuckled Orochimaru to himself. "It seems that this village breeds the most unique of infamous shinobi in the world." "Is there a point to all this?" asked Naruto as he pulled out his pocket watch and looked at the time with a bored look on his face since he really didn't see the point of Orochimaru talking to him at all. "Because if not, then I have other things I wish to accomplish and a tight window of time to do so." "I just wanted to meet the man behind the rumors," said Orochimaru as he paced around Naruto as he talked, "and I have to say that you are as formidable as they say you are judging by your aura alone. But while I am here I wish to offer you a chance to join me. Imagine what the two of us could accomplish if we put our minds together." "I have already accomplished what you could not," said Naruto with a shake of his head, "so I don't see the need to work with a man who only really cares about extending his own lifetime instead of aiding others. We are polar opposites on this subject." "And what exactly do you mean by it when you say that you have accomplished what I have not?" asked Orochimaru with a tone of genuine curiosity since he wanted to know. "Why, for a self-claimed genius that you say you are," said Naruto as his eyes changed to the Sharingan he took from Itachi, something that Orochimaru looked at in shock since he recognized the things that he himself had tried to take from the man years ago and had failed in his attempts. "The fact that you failed to understand me throws doubt on that." "Impossible," said Orochimaru angrily. "How did you acquire Itachi's eyes?" "I killed the man and took them from him," said Naruto as he blinked. "When he did, his eyes had turned back to normal, simple as that." "And you honestly expect me to believe that you, a mere child, were able to kill someone like Itachi Uchiha?" "I don't care what you believe really," said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "I did, and I have his eyes because of it. So the real question now is, what exactly are you going to do about it?" "Oh, nothing," said Orochimaru, "since it is not you who I am here for." "Oh, really?" said Naruto with a quizzical look. "And who, pray tell, are you here for? Somebody from my team?" "Oh no," said Orochimaru with a wave of his hand. "Perished the thought." "Well, that's good for you," said Naruto with a chuckle as he flexed his fingers a bit, "because if it was, then I would have to kill you. So you are perfectly fine with me doing what I am doing when it comes to others and only care when it is your own group." "I am a doctor, not a shinobi. I stay out of politics. So you will have to deal with the repercussions, not me. But let's go back a second and recount the fact that you honestly believe that you can kill me. I am not Itachi Uchiha, and I will not die so easily." "No," said Naruto with a laugh, "you will die easier than him." Naruto then flicked his finger. This caused one of his wires to slice Orochimaru's head clean off, but it then dissolved and turned back into the mud from which it was made from. But Naruto saw with his Sharingan while it was activated that the thing he had killed was a mud clone. He smirked slightly as he felt the teeth try and sink their way into his neck. He felt them chip as they bit into steel instead of flesh. "What the hell?" shouted Orochimaru as he retracted his head and held his mouth in pain as the blood seeped out from the broken tooth. "What did you do to me?" "I told you I accomplished what you failed to do," said Naruto with a laugh. "You will pay for this," he seethed in anger. But while he would have made another attempt to try and mark the boy with his curse seal, he was on a timetable as well, so he had to go now. He knew with Minato and Danzo with their root forces he would have to be quick if he wanted to place his curse seal on the person he infiltrated the village to put it on. He hadn't planned on trying to mark another person, but the surgeon of death was here and the chance was just too much to pass up. He had heard what the brat could do and wanted to get him to join him willingly so as to mark him later when he understood his bloodline more. Now that the brat showed more abilities than he expected, he would most definitely mark him for a future body. He hissed in anger and threw a few smoke bombs to block Naruto's vision before he tried to leave. Yet he screamed in pain as he felt his arm get cut off at the shoulder. "Did you really expect to try and curse me and get away unscathed?" asked Naruto as he pulled his hand back. Orochimaru's now severed hand flew into his own. Orochimaru stopped for a second to glare at him before he vanished in a swirl of leaves. "Just something to remember this moment by," said Naruto to himself before he opened his operating room door and placed the arm in cold storage. He was unsure as to what he could learn from it, but it was still something to look into in his spare time. "Well, now that I dealt with that unexpected guest," said Naruto as he walked out of the room and sent the door away since it was no longer needed. "Now if I can just get to my destination without further interruption of any sort." As soon as he said that, no less than 24 root shinobi appeared and surrounded him. "One day," said Naruto with a sarcastic tone in his voice, "and I honestly don't know when it will happen, but I will learn eventually to not ask stupid questions that will jinx me. Alright, let's get this over with. So let's skip the whole 'you will serve our master' speech and just get to the fighting bit where I kill all of you and head off to my destination." The root shinobi all looked at each other for a bit before the leader of the group stepped forward. "Well, this is different," said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, but still whipped out his cane in preparation. Never had a volunteer come forward before. Naruto then swirled his hand in the air for a second. The root members who had come to try and kidnap him for what seemed like the 10th time in his life stopped for a few seconds before they fell into pieces. "Okay," said Naruto as he pulled out a book filled with information about plants. "So before yet another group appears to mess with me, let's find those plants I wanted to find while here." He then set out to find what he said he would find. It was true that he sent his group away to deal with the immediate threat of Orochimaru since they were not ready to fight the man, but he was being honest about finding the plants. They were strong, yes, but Orochimaru was infamous for the tactics he used to win any and all fights that even some of the most infamous of shinobi have fallen to. The only means to beat the man was through sheer unpredictability, and dear Kami Naruto was nothing more than that word to the fullest when it came to fighting. So with that in mind he set out to find them. 2 days later, Naruto stood with his group, who he noticed were glaring at each other heavily for some reason that when he asked about they turned their glares to him, so he backed off for his own safety, along with the rest of the squads that had passed the second part of the exam as well. The one squad that caught his eye was Squad 7 since he saw Sasuke return with them, but he was taken away shortly after he had arrived from some strange markings that had appeared on his neck. Naruto had faced the young man twice and knew that he did not have such markings on his neck before now. So Naruto looked at this and guessed that this was person that Orochimaru went off to mark after he fled from Naruto. So while Sasuke was obviously getting some sort of treatment that would try and remove the seal off the boy, which he was fairly sure would not work since Anko's had not been removed and she had one far longer than Sasuke, the rest of the shinobi who passed the second part of the exam stood and watched as Minato told the reason why they had these exams. Naruto was writing in his notebook since he could care less why they did it, since he was a doctor it mattered not to him. But eventually the next part started, where they were told that they would be pit against one another to have the numbers for the final portion of the exam. Minato clicked a button that revealed a board where names would be displayed to announce the two people fighting. And to no surprise whatsoever to Naruto, his name was the first, and he could only smirk about his opponent. Kiba Inuzuka. This guy was a real asshole, not just to him but to many others as well. He acted like he was better than others when he knew he wasn't and hit on women who were disgusted by it and didn't want him to since he thought that as the alpha male that he was allowed to do so since it was his right. But the reason that Naruto hated him with a passion was the prick was the one who led the group of his bullies to him with his sense of smell. No matter where Naruto hid, Kiba would find him. Then when he got his fucking dog Akamaru, he would have the mutt piss on him when he was beaten into the ground to insult him, stating that Naruto was a Zeta male with no chance to ever rise up and should do the world a service and just die. Naruto would take great pleasure in showing this alpha male what a Zeta male could do. The two of them walked to their starting positions while the rest of the participants walked up to the balcony so that they could observe the fight from a safe distance. "Well, if it isn't Kiba Inuzuka," said Naruto as he twirled his cane a bit before he slammed it down and began to lean off of it. Oh, cruel irony. "So you know who I am," said Kiba with an arrogant smirk on his face, since the fact that someone he didn't know knew about him only fueled his ego far more than being part of one of the founding clans did already. Then again, an alpha such as me should be known throughout the elemental countries. My infamy will grow and all women will swoon at my feet and just beg to be bred as my bitch. "No to all that," said Naruto with a mental gag that this man was not only so very sexist since he assumed that women were simply his to breed, but the image of him breeding alone was enough to make him gag. "I simply know you from the past." "Oh, is that right?" said Kiba with a raised eyebrow as he stood there with that smirk still on his face and his arms crossed. Naruto so wanted to slap that smirk off his face right now, but he would hold back since he had a plan that would scar this asshole for the rest of his life. "I am surprised that you don't recognize me, really," said Naruto in mock hurt. "You knew me so well when we were children that it hurts me to see you forget me so easily." Said Kiba as he rubbed his chin in thought. He looked at Naruto closely from top to bottom, but no matter how long he looked he was still unable to recognize him. "Sorry to say that you are not familiar to me in any way. That obviously means that you weren't all that important if I don't remember you as you say I should." "Well, now that I think about it myself," said Naruto with a chuckle, "it's easy to see why you don't recognize me. Well, besides the fact that you only think with your dick, which I am guessing is rather small since you basically claim you have to rape women to breed, I don't look the same as I did in the past." "Oh, I am so going to fuck you up for saying that," growled Kiba enraged that the size of his genitals was put into question. "Odd choice of words for this moment," said Naruto with a shake of his head, "and for the record I am straight, so no thanks on the offer." "I'll fucking kill you." "Oh," said Naruto with a smirk with mock sympathy, "is the alpha male getting pissed at the words of a Zeta?" Naruto's words caught Kiba completely off guard since he didn't expect it. In all his life he had only ever called one person that a Zeta since the boy had been pathetic to not only him but the rest of his group of friends. His eyes opened wide when the truth hit him like a ton of bricks. "Rag boy?" he asked. This caused all the others who had bullied Naruto alongside him to open their eyes in shock as well, since this was a surprise to them as well. They all assumed that Naruto had died somewhere pathetic and alone and had gone off and bullied others until they grew out of it years later. While they no longer bullied, their arrogance still was there for all to see. "In the flesh," said Naruto calmly. Rag Boy was the name they all called him since his clothes were basically patched together rags, which he was happy with since he was warm. While inside he was seething at the fact that the nickname he utterly hated was brought back up again after all these years. He calmed himself since his plan would make up for all this. "Good to see that you remember me. I have to admit that I look different with nicer clothes and well-kept hair, so like I said, it is easy to understand why you didn't recognize me." Kiba looked at him in shock for a few seconds more before his look of shock turned to one of humor. He began to laugh so hard that he doubled over and held his stomach as the tears fell from his eyes since he was laughing so hard. Naruto stood there calmly and let him laugh, since in the end he wouldn't be laughing anymore. "I can't believe that such a worthless person such as you is my opponent," said Kiba as he finally stopped laughing and was able to talk properly. "To think that you survived when we all thought you had died." "Well, I am alive and well," said Naruto with a shrug, "no thanks to the likes of you." "You know what," said Kiba with an arrogant smirk, "I'm in a good mood right now. So how about a deal? If you get on your knees and beg me not to hurt you like old times, I just might not." "I learned when I was 5 that you were a liar when you gave me that option," said Naruto with yet another shake of his head, "and I am not the same person I was before. So how about this for a deal? You get on your knees and forfeit the match, thus solidifying yourself forever as my personal bitch. Or you could fight me, but be warned that if you go that particular route that I will break you in a manner that you will never recover from." Kiba didn't even answer with words to his offer and charged forward in a primal rage since the person who he saw as so far beneath him was now demanding that he submit. This would not stand in his mind and he would hurt Naruto in such a manner that he would never look up again from. But his attacks were not connecting to his intended target, since Naruto was easily able to dodge everything he threw at him. Kiba was throwing punches wildly since he was fueled by rage, so his move set was so easily predictable and dodge-able. Naruto grew tired of dodging after a minute and swept Kiba off his feet with a sweep kick. He then jumped back since he wanted to get some space between them. "Damn it, hold fucking still!" shouted Kiba as he got back to his feet and prepared to attack again. "Not so easy to hurt me when you don't have the numbers to overpower your target, is it?" asked Naruto with a frown since he always remembered them ganging up on him. "I don't need them to kick your worthless ass. Yet you haven't landed a single blow." "Neither have you." "That's because I didn't want to just yet," said Naruto simply as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He pulled out a vial filled with his blood and crushed it in his hand. He felt as the thick warm liquid moved down his arm and onto his cane. Minato looked at this with analytical eyes since he was curious as to how his bloodline worked. He didn't have much else other than the few rumors he had heard and what little his own daughter told him he could do, so this was the perfect time to see it in action. Naruto waited for a few seconds as the blood pooled into the open mouth of the skull that topped his cane, and when it did he quickly turned around and swiped down as the blood turned into a curved blade, making the cane into a scythe. The blade met flesh as it sliced Akamaru right down the center. The mud had been slowly sneaking around the arena so as to attack from behind, thinking that he could catch Naruto by surprise. He had no idea that Naruto was fully aware of his location and simply waiting for him to attack as he did. The mud was cut cleanly in half and perished from it as was natural. But before the two sections of the body even hit the floor, Naruto raised his hand and pulled the blood from the body out and formed into an orb in his hand. He pulled out another vial and funneled that blood as well as the blood used to form the blade into it to use for later. Sure, it was dog's blood, but with his bloodline any type of the stuff could be used as a weapon. "Akamaru!" shouted Kiba in shock that he had just witnessed his canine companion had just been killed like he had. He ran forward and grabbed a hold of the two halves that the mud had become. Tears began to form in his eyes since his friend was now dead, but while the sadness was there, the rage began to grow as well. "That mud has finally been put down like it should have years ago," said Naruto with a smirk, "and now I had to be the one to do it." "You," was all Kiba was able to seethe out as his rage grew exponentially. Naruto could see his eyes change in a way that looked more like a rabid animal than human, but then again his clan were akin to the canines they partnered up with. "I don't like being pissed on," said Naruto with a serious tone, "or assholes in general." "How dare you?" "How dare I?" asked Naruto sarcastically as he placed his hand on his chest to emphasize his point, this coming from the boy who made it a hobby of his to hunt down a child his own age who couldn't defend himself, and thought it was so fun he repeated the event again and again. "We were fucking kids." "Yes, we were," said Naruto as he looked down in a manner that his eyes were covered by his hat, but your actions have consequences. And unfortunately for you, the boy who you bullied for so long grew stronger and channeled the hate into a drive to better myself. Your actions have led to this, and I even gave you a way to leave unscathed from this, but you arrogantly thought that you had already won. So this is your own fault, not mine, and you get to live with it for the rest of your life." Kiba at this point was too far gone, and got into a stance to use one of his more powerful techniques, Fang over Fang. While the power was half due to Akamaru being killed, yet his mind was not thinking rationally and just wanted to make Naruto suffer for the death of his friend. So in massive black surge of energy he charged forward in a rotating form that was meant to cut like a massive buzzsaw. Naruto didn't even move from his spot, and simply held his hand up to intercept the attack. He used his steel release to harden it up, so when the attack connected to his outstretched hand, literal sparks flew out from the friction of the attack hitting metal. Naruto was pushed back slowly as Kiba kept his attack up, but it wasn't doing the damage that he wanted it to. Minato and the others watching this were surprised as well, since this was not something they thought would happen. They had at least assumed that Naruto would dodge the attack, not block it somehow with his gloved hand, which only made them question what the hell the glove was made out of. But eventually Naruto grew bored with this as well and channeled more power to his hand. This caused it to glow to the point that it was even visible with the glove on. Naruto smirked as he then expelled the power outwards in a controlled explosion that blasted Kiba back quite a distance. Kiba was slow to get back to his feet, and he felt as his face was bleeding. "Genin Kiba," said Minato in genuine concern for the young boy's safety. Sim was a friend of his and he didn't want her son to get too hurt. Do you wish to continue? Yeah, Mutt, said Naruto with a laugh. Do you want to keep going? 'Cause I can understand if you do. It just means that I win and you are now even worse than a Zeta male. I wish to continue, growled Kiba, who was not going to allow that insult to go unpunished. He didn't know how he was going to do it, but he would make Naruto pay. Naruto simply remained in place since he was not intimidated in the slightest. He was, however, hoping that Kiba would continue and had prepared for it if he did. But he understood how Kiba thought and how to goad him into fighting this one-sided fight. Come then, Kiba, said Naruto as he held up his and opened his hand so it was an open palm. Minato saw him do this and immediately knew what was going to happen. He tried to stop it by signaling his shinobi to stop it, but by then it was too late. Kiba had charged forward to attack yet again, but thin red lines appeared out of nowhere around his arms and legs. Naruto then closed his grip, doing so tightened the wires that he had channeled chakra through so as to superheat them up. The wires cut his arms and legs off in sections as well as cauterized the wounds so Kiba would not bleed out. Kiba fell face first into the ground as he screamed in pain from the loss of his limbs. But it wasn't just his arms and legs he had lost, since the angle the wires cut into his legs also cut off his cock and balls as well. The people watching turned green in the face as they saw this happen, since it was gruesome in every aspect of the word. Medic Nin appeared to get the boy to the hospital for immediate surgery. Naruto simply smirked as he saw them take the boy and his severed limbs as well. They were going to try and heal him, but the damage was irreversible since he had cut the limbs into sections that were cauterized as well. Naruto made his way to head up the stairs, but his path was blocked by Minato, who looked extremely pissed. Why did you do this to Kiba? Asked Minato in a pissed voice. I warned him that if he fought me that I would break him in a manner that he would not recover, said Naruto as walked around the man who sired him. Don't blame me for the results when he had the chance to leave. You didn't have to ruin his career as a shinobi like you did, shouted Minato behind him. This caused Naruto to stop walking to talk. The world knows what I do to those who I dislike, for reasons ranging from threats to friends and loved ones to threat for my services. This is what I do to those who I hate with unbridled rage. I won't kill them, no, since that is too easy, but I will put them in a situation that they so wish that I did. Remember that bit of information for the future. Naruto then walked up the stairs since he had said what he wanted to say, and it left Minato with a cold chill as he began to sweat in fear. Chapter 6. A Scarred Past. Naruto walked up the stairs to take his place next to his squad since his match was over, and he was not going to fight another one at this point, since they were only expected to fight the once to dwindle the numbers down to half of what they were now. Naruto could only chuckle to himself as the various Chunin hopefuls went far out of their way to get out of his own path, since after what he did to Kiba they were genuinely terrified of the guy. Most of them had grew up to become shinobi and thought that there would be grand adventure and fortunes to be earned in their futures, but Naruto had just injected them all with a harsh dose of reality with his actions. No one expected Kiba to become a limbless torso, and now that she saw someone their own age with such abilities not only capable, but willing to do that to someone, it did not bode well for many of them, and they were honestly considering a new career path. Minato took a minute to make sure that Kiba was in good hands with the medic Nin before he took out the button to start the next fight. But before he could press the button, multiple shinobi from other villages that had made it through the forest of death raised their hands and forfeited their chances of advancing. Minato was genuinely surprised to see so many people quit like that, but after seeing Kiba becoming crippled like he had, it was not wonder that they would do so. So when those who forfeited left the building to pack up their stuff in their rooms and go home, Minato called over one of his shinobi to look over the list of those still in this event. He saw that the numbers were far lower than he had expected and thought about it for a second, since there were just 2 people over the limit that they wanted for the third and final portion of the exam. So he did the most basic thing he could possibly think of and drew 4 names from a box to decide the 4 people who would fight, with the rest passing this portion and would head to the finals. Minato took the time to explain this to those still left since they had to know, and then pulled the names before he had them shown on the board. Gaara vs. Lee. Gaara saw his name on the board and simply grunted, since to him it didn't matter if he fought or not. But this did present the perfect moment to slate his bloodlust, as the voice and head was whispering into the dark recesses of his mind, which only made his insomnia from lack of years of sleep worse. So he put up 2 fingers up to use a jutsu and felt as the sand he controlled swirled around him, and he disappeared in the swirl of it. He then reappeared as the sand swirled around in the center of the arena and then dispersed to show Gaara standing there like he had moments ago on the balcony. Lee pumped his fist in joy that he would be able to show off all his skills that he had trained so long to master with his sensei. So he jumped from the balcony and landed on the ground and quickly got to his feet and positioned himself into a fighting stance with one hand behind his back and one hand out with his fingers up, and used them in a come-get-me motion. "I'm so very happy that I can still get the chance to fight in this part of the exam," said Lee with a smile on his face. He expected for Gaara to say something back, but he just gave the young bushy-browed man a glare that could freeze even ice itself. They remained like this for a bit, and Naruto as well as the others who still remained all began to wonder just which one of the two combatants would be the one to make the first move. And to no one's surprise it was Lee who charged forward to try and land the first blow of the match. He got close to Gaara and then jumped up into the air and delivered a spinning kick towards Gaara's face. But the problem with that was that Gaara's sand blocked the kick without him moving so much as an inch from his starting position, or even losing the glare on his face. Lee saw as the sand then morphed into a hand that tried to engulf him within it, but he was too quick for it to do so, and jumped back just in time. Lee had been taught by his sensei from an early age to analyze his opponent for a weakness, and to his regret he was not able to see a clear one since the sand seemed to be a factor that he would have to get past before he could inflict any sort of damage to his opponent in the first place. So with no other real options to work with at the moment, he continued his attacks, but every one of them was deflected by Gaara's sand that shifted around so Lee's kicks or his punches did not connect. A strand of sand tried to attack him from behind, but Lee was able to use a kunai to cut through it so that it was not in a solid enough mass to do more than blow sand in his face. He tried to use the kunai to try and cut through the sand that was protecting Gaara himself, but that plan failed since the sand was thicker around him, so the kunai didn't cut through and Lee was forced to dodge yet again as it tried to engulf him. Lee had to expertly dodge sand attacks from all around him, yet his intense training was paying off since he was able to do so without breaking a sweat while doing so. He then threw some shuriken to see if that was a viable option to attack his opponent, but once again his efforts were thwarted by the damn sand that Gaara had protecting him. Lee was starting to become a bit stressed over the fact that not only were none of his attacks working against Gaara, but he had yet to even move from his spot since the match started in the first place. It was when he looked closely that the giant gourd on Gaara's back was spilling out more sand that fell into the ground. But the thing that caught his attention was the fact that it was not pooling around his feet like it should have since it was hitting the ground, yet it wasn't. It was then that Lee felt the ground rumble, and things then went straight to hell in a handbasket. Lee tried to jump out of the way as multiple tendrils of sand burst out from the ground, but while he was able to dodge a number of them he still failed in the end and was grabbed by the foot by one of them. Lee was then slammed into the wall hard, knocking the wind out of him since the pain was intense. Yet before he could catch his breath his entire body was pummeled by fists made of sand before he was then slammed hard into the ground near Gaara with enough force to crack the ground into a spiderweb-like pattern. Lee tried to get up from this position, but Gaara was not done since he dropped a massive mass of solid sand onto his back with enough force to break his spine. Lee cried out in pain as he felt his lower body go completely numb. The damage that was done to him had literally crippled him from the waist down. Gaara began to smirk as he finally moved enough to lift his hand up so as to finally engulf Lee in his sand so as to crush him in a bloody manner. But before he could do what he had planned to do he was bombarded by several jonin with water jutsu to soften his sand and extract Lee so he didn't die. "Lee!" shouted the boy's sensei Might Guy as he saw his prized student in such a situation, and it hurt him to see Lee like this. "What did he do to you?" Did I make you proud, sensei?" asked Lee before he coughed out blood that had pooled into his mouth. "Lee," said Guy as he held his student's hand as a form of comfort, "you will be fine. We just need to get you to the hospital and the doctors will fix you up." "I highly doubt they can," said Naruto, who appeared next to them both out of the blue, which made Guy flinch, since it was surprising. What was all Guy was able to say since he really had nothing else he could say in a situation like this. "I am saying that the damage done to his spine is too extensive to be healed in any hospital," said Naruto, as he gave the young man a look to see just how badly Gaara had hurt him. "How do you know this?" asked Guy in slight anger that this strange young man had come out of the blue and said that his student's chances of recovery were basically zero. "You may have heard about me through rumors," said Naruto simply with a shrug of his shoulders. "My name is Naruto, and I am known throughout the elemental countries as the Surgeon of Death. This bit of information hit Guy in a manner that left him not only shocked but completely white in the face as well. He had heard about Naruto from various rumors that had spread in the village, but he had assumed that the person who was dubbed such a name would be far older than Naruto was. But from what he had heard that Naruto was able to do, the boy obviously knew more about Lee's critical condition than he possibly could, since he was not a medic in any sense of the word. "Can you heal my student?" asked Guy hopefully, since he wanted his student to become a great shinobi in the future, and as he was right now, he was unable to continue on with his career. "Actually I can," said Naruto with a smile. While he may have been cold to those who were his enemies as well as those he swore vengeance against, he was not to those he helped in the medical field. On the contrary, it made him feel good inside, since he knew his mother would have loved to see him help others like he did. "And that is why I am here right now, to offer you my services to heal the man. Please help my student," said Guy as he bowed his head to the point that it touched the ground as he begged for Naruto's assistance. The spectacle made Naruto feel a bit embarrassed, since he didn't really expect it. Most people just knew that he did what he did for money, so there was no need to beg him like Guy was right now. "Okay," said Naruto with a sweat drop as he saw this, "there is no need to beg like that. I'll help your student, but it will cost a bit for the medical procedure." "Whatever the price is, I will happily pay it," said Guy as the tears of joy began to flood out of his eyes. Naruto pulled his book of prices out, and saw the various things he would have to heal to fix Lee and get him back into pristine condition. This is why a lot of his operations got expensive like they did, since the prices began to pile on, and the gross sum was larger than if the patient only had the one problem alone. So once the price was tallied up, he wrote it out on a receipt and handed it to Guy to see with his own eyes. Guy's eyes bugged out at the high price, since he did not have that much on him, or even in his account at the moment. "I am guessing from your reaction that you don't have the money that this will all cost," said Naruto with a sigh, "but you look like a trustworthy sort of guy who truly cares for his student. So if you will sign an agreement to pay me the price in full by the end of the exams, then I will operate immediately, and he will be up and about good as new after a few days' rest." "Yes," said Guy as he wiped the tears from his eyes. Naruto pulled out a scroll that he had multiple copies of, which were the simple terms of future payment, which stated that if the money was not paid in full, then fees would be added and then organs would be harvested if no attempt of payment was made, so as to make his money back in some way. It may seem gruesome, but those organs would help others, so it was kind of a chaotic neutral issue if you thought about it in the broad scheme of things. Naruto wrote out the price owed, which Guy signed without hesitation, and then Naruto summoned up the door to his operating room and lifted Lee up in his arms and entered it to operate on Lee. Soon after he left, various shinobi appeared to smooth out the arena for the next fight between the final two genin chosen whose names appeared on the board. Hinata vs. Neji. So it has come to this, Hinata. Our long-awaited match. One without the Hyuga main family holding me back from showing you my power, thought Neji to himself, while Hinata looked pissed at seeing her cousin showing such hate for her in his eyes. Hinata Hyuga was an arrogant woman if there ever was one. Then again, she was from the Hyuga clan, and at least half of them were haughty because of their dojutsu. Hinata was the daughter of the clan head Hayashi, and she had been taught most of her life that she was better than most people, and those lessons had stuck to her in her youth, and had remained into her teenage years. She had been kidnapped at the age of 3 by a Kumo shinobi posing as an ambassador, and had been saved by Konoha shinobi. Something in her mind snapped that day, and she wanted to never feel that type of helplessness again in her life, so she trained her mind as well as her body to be cruel like many of the rest of the Hyuga main branch members were. She had remembered the days she had to fight her younger sister Hanabi for the right to bear the title of clan heiress, and she had fun beating that little bitch within an inch of her life so that she couldn't get back up. She then applied the caged bird seal onto her sister's head and laughed as she used it with glee as she saw his sister twitch in pain on the ground. Neji had been there that day since the whole family was made to watch the event, and saw that his cousin was truly evil down to the soul. The failed kidnapping of Hanata had ended with Neji's father being sacrificed to Kumo so that they got a Hyuga, but the seal on his head killed him, so they didn't have a live one. Since that day he had nothing more than rage towards his uncle and his cousin, since Hayashi was supposed to be the one sent to Kumo, being the clan head and all, but Neji's father was his twin and looked just like him, so he was sent instead. Because of Hayashi's failure to protect his own daughter, Neji was now without a father and a life of essentially slavery to look forward to the rest of his life under the fear of death with the activation of the seal on his head. But now, the gods had seen fit to offer him a chance to finally vent out his fury towards his cousin, and he would be damned if he didn't act upon it. "We really shouldn't have to fight like this, Neji," replied Hinata with an arrogant tone of voice while getting into her gentle fist stance, which mirrored Neji's. "I am going to regret this in the end. I just know it," thought Neji before the proctor signaled the match to start, and saw Neji move in to dominate the match as fast as possible. On the balcony, Kuratsuchi and Haku watched the match with sharp, keen eyes which never missed a single action performed by either combatant. Neji was being the aggressor of the two, striking with the purpose of crippling his slightly younger, and yet far more pissed cousin. Hinata, for her part, was showing she was quite agile when in a fight, and was able to dodge the strikes aimed at the key parts of her body, which showed that even with her arrogant nature she had taken her training seriously. When she was not dodging Neji's strikes, Hinata tried to deliver her own back in return, and was actually holding her ground against him. This pissed her off, since in her own mind she should be winning at his point, since Neji was a branch member of the family, and as such had far less training, yet here he was matching her blow for blow with skills that he should not possess. But while Hinata began to grow slowly tired from all this, Neji's sheer hatred for his cousin kept him going strong. So eventually he powered through her attacks and began to inflict damage. As they fought, Naruto appeared via his door since he was done with Lee's surgery. The process, while unorthodox in application, did not take very long since he knew exactly what he was doing. This was not the first, or even the last time he would do this. So he took his place back next to his friends, and nodded to Guy to let him know Lee was fine. Guy smiled and gave him a thumbs up in appreciation. So now that he was back without any form of distraction, he looked down to see Neji kicking Hinata's arrogant ass, and he had to admit that he had not expected this chain of events. "He's damaged her arms pretty badly," whispered Naruto to himself, and saw Neji deliver an uppercut to the girl's face before delivering another blow that sent her flying back onto the ground. Hinata was practically seething in rage at this point, and people could hear her growling in anger. It is said the Hyuga clan's gentle fist taijutsu focuses on shutting down chakra points of their targets, using the Byakugan. It has the power to see those chakra points and shut them down with each strike using the chakra in their hands. By hitting the specific points all over the body, a person's chakra network cannot function, or if the Hyuga wishes to be cruel, damage a person's internal organs without actually piercing the body, added Haku while seeing Hinata get up and Neji once more going on his brutal attack on the girl. With his dominance being clear with each passing second, Neji decided to go in for the kill, and hit Hinata right at a point in her chest near the heart. The girl gasped in surprise and in pain before stumbling back, clutching her chest, and looking at Neji in shock that he would hit such a point in her body. She knew the chakra points of the body almost as well as Neji did, and also knew that point when hit could cause serious damage to the heart muscles, if not cause heart failure if left untreated. Before Hinata could even manage to speak, Neji was upon her again, hitting her in the stomach, making the girl cough up blood, and cause the girl further pain. Neji thought now was the perfect time to finish this once and for all, but he then fell over in pain as the seal on his head was activated. Hinata had a smug look on her face as her hands formed the hand signal to activate the seal, and as she saw her cousin on the ground crying out in pain from the agony shooting directly into his brain, she could only picture what horrific punishment her father would give Neji for attempting to strike her down like he did. Who knows? Maybe he would end up like her pathetic uncle and be shipped off to die, but that was a question for later, and Neji's pain was her enjoyment for now. Naruto looked at this with eyes full of disgust, since she was basically cheating. She was given a handicap in the form of the seal on Neji's head. Neji had been moments from victory, and yet Hinata cheated, so he was unable to finish her off, and what pissed him off even more was that all the people watching this weren't even doing anything to try and help the poor lad. See, this was another reason he disliked the arrogance of clans and villages, since they used the whole clan matters excuse to get away with shit like this kind of thing. Naruto loathed Hinata for her attitude towards others she deemed as beneath her. Plus add in the fact that the little bitch of a princess had used her family's style to force him to his knees and then stepped on his head before slamming it to the ground so that he bowed to her only made the hatred he had for her far more understandable. While he wished to deal with the bitch personally in a manner such as he had done to Kiba, but the thought about it for a moment before he grinned, since this situation provided the perfect opportunity to do what he wanted without repercussions for himself. So with that in mind, he bit his finger, and then pointed the bloody digit at Neji. He fired the blood at the tip like a bullet from a flintlock pistol, but without the bang caused from igniting gunpowder. The blood hit Neji in the side of the head, but he was already in tremendous amounts of pain, so a little more from this new source went undetected. The blood seeped into Neji's pores. There it began to infect the lad from the inside quite quickly. Naruto felt as this happened and waited until he had full control before he acted. He forced Neji's body to rise up, still screaming in pain since he could do nothing about the seal at the moment, and pounced upon Hinata and began to pound her face using Neji's fists as the instrument of both their hatred towards the girl. This surprised many to see Neji still attacking while screaming in pain, but eventually when the shock of the situation faded, several jonin appeared and pulled Neji off of Hanata before medic Nin arrived to take her away for immediate medical attention. Once the match was over, Naruto clicked his fingers so that the blood he infused into Neji's body became dormant, and he no longer could control it since it morphed into blood type of the person it was inside of. He learned he could do this, and it came in handy from time to time like it did now. This caused Neji to pass out and fall over in exhaustion since his body was far beyond its limits with all that transpired. He was picked up by a medic Nin as well so as to get medical aid for himself. Minato congratulated the genin who were still here and told them that the finals for the events would be held in 1 month's time. He then had them all pull out a number from a box to determine the matches for the finals, and they went as such. Naruto vs. Gaara. Kuratsuchi vs. Sakura. Haku vs. Ino. Shikamaru vs. Temari. Shino vs. Tenten. Neji vs. Naruto. Choji vs. Kankuro. Once the matches were set up and official, Naruto met up with his group so as to walk with them back to the hotel in the village itself so that they could collect their stuff and head out from the village. But before he joined them to begin the walk back, he called over Guy and told him to wait for a minute before he entered his operating room to collect Lee. Guy grabbed a hold of the sleeping lad and told Naruto he would make sure Lee took it easy for the next couple of days as well as have the money in full by the deadline before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto then smiled as he finally joined his group, who were still glaring at each other the entire time that they were walking back without a word being spoken by either of them the entire way back. Naruto had tried to get a conversation started to break the awkward silence, but the moment he opened his mouth to try and say anything he felt the killing intent they had towards each other directed at him, and he knew to simply keep his mouth shut if he wanted to survive unscathed. He may be a surgeon capable of gruesome maiming and killing, yet he was a man who knew when to fear women at times like this. Eventually they made their way to the hotel, where Naruto separated from the girls since he could sense they were still pissed at one another, so he was not going to get in their crosshairs. He left a simple note that explained that he would meet them at the front gate by 8 p.m. to take them back home so that at least they had a proper departure time set. So Naruto set out to find something to eat since he had been eating dried meat for the past few days, and he wanted a proper meal to leave this village on. So he searched for a place to eat at and finally decided on a barbecue restaurant that he had seen in his youth but never was able to go inside since him and his mother never had the money to pay for it. He went in and sat at a table before a woman came and gave him a menu. He ordered what he wanted and waited for a bit until she came back with his order. The meat was raw, but then again there was a mini grill built into the table so he could cook it there. So he did just that and enjoyed his meal in peace. He left a good tip and paid for the meal up front before he left to find something to pass the time until they left the village. He found a quiet place to sit for a spell and write out messages for various people that he summoned crows to deliver for him with the utmost haste since timing was essential for this matter. He smiled as the last one took off with the message he wrote out, and then sighed in relief that he could finally relax for a few hours before he set out. Yet the second he got comfortable his gut went off like firecracker, and he moved just in time to dodge a swipe of a clawed hand that sliced large chunks out of the tree he had been resting under. Naruto quickly got to his feet as he rolled out of the way from the surprise attack and got a good look at the person that attacked him out of the blue. She had long, spiky, untamed brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils, elongated canine teeth and nails. She had what appeared to be fang markings on her cheeks as well as markings over her eyes and a dark shade of purple lipstick on her lips. She wore the standard outfit of a Konoha shinobi consisting of flak jacket and a black suit underneath with the sleeves rolled up and bandages around her legs. I am gonna guess by your physical appearance that you are an Inuzuka, sighed Naruto since he recognized the appearance of those who belonged in that particular clan. The woman did not respond at all to his assumptions, she just stood there and growled in rage. And judging from your rage towards me, I am gonna guess that you are Kiba's mother, said Naruto as he got his cane ready for the fight that was most likely to happen. He had crippled the woman's son beyond any sort of medical care, so it was a fair assumption that she was here to do to him what he had done to Kiba. You will pay for what you did to my son, she snarled. Before we proceed with, well, whatever it is you plan to try and do, said Naruto as he pulled out a medium-sized vial of his blood and began to toss it up and down in his hand, can I at least get your name? Sure, why not? Responded the woman angrily, my name is Inuzuka. Remember it as I rip your body to fucking shreds. Not one to gloat or kill without good reason, said Naruto with a glare of his own, but are you sure that you wish to go down this road? You have a chance to simply leave here. I have no quarrel with you, and as such I don't want to hurt you. You seem to be under the assumption that I am alone in this, said Sum with a sinister grin as she howled out in a manner that people miles away heard her. Within moments, Naruto was surrounded by at least 7/8 of the entire Inuzuka clan who were all there to join Sum in her vengeful attack on Naruto. Those who were not here were the ones who were too young or old, or were on missions away from the village entirely, so weren't here to aid Sum in her vengeance. When you hurt one of our family, then you must deal with the rest of us. Well shit, said Naruto to himself, since he did not see this coming when he did to Kiba as he did. He never had to fight off an entire clan before, and while he was confident in his abilities, he did not want to fight them like this, since he was not one to fight those who have not pissed him off. Even now these people were here since he had crippled one of their own, and he could understand that since he would have done the same. But before he could try and calm the crowd down in some manner, they all attacked in unison. This made him suffer a flashback of the moment in time when he was nearly killed by a pack of wolves when he was 7. Now, as he saw them charge him, he looked at Sum, who had murderous rage in her heart, and activated his haki in full. The effect was immediate, with the effects being amplified by their animalistic instincts. From an outside appearance it would seem that they were simply afraid of one single person, yet what their instincts showed them was a shadowy figure of a monster that towered all of them in size, with the will to kill them if push came to shove. Sum, her family, and their canine companions fell to their knees in a cold sweat as they looked down in fear. They couldn't even look at Naruto in the face as he used this ability since it was so potent. Naruto walked over to where Sum was kneeling and used his cane and placed it under her chin to raise it up so that she looked at him. Sum looked him in the eyes, and at first she was expecting the same type of murderous rage she had towards him to be there, yet what she saw surprised her entirely. There was no anger or hatred in his eyes, only understanding. I know why you did what you did, said Naruto with a serious face, since he honestly did, since any woman worth their salt would do the same thing for their child. Yet I don't wish to harm you since I have no quarrel with you. Then why did you cripple my child? Growled Sum. It took all her willpower to even muster up the courage to growl, and it affected her body as her eyes began to tear up from it. I did it out of vengeance, said Naruto simply, his face devoid of all emotion since this was a serious case. What did my clan ever do to you? Your clan has done nothing to me, said Naruto as he shook his head, but your son did, and it was the reason why I did what I did. What could my son have possibly done to warrant such a crippling blow be dealt to him in the gruesome manner that you did it? Let me explain it to you, said Naruto as he glared in anger as the memories of the things Kiba did to him infuriated him as they came to the forefront of his mind. I was born in this village. I had nothing more than the name my mother gave me and the bare minimum of anything else. Yet I was happy since I had a mother to love me with all her heart. Times were tough for us since we were so low class in the village that even if we died no one would know or even care about it. I tried to make friends, but no one wanted me as a friend. Your son and his own group of friends that consisted of the other clan heads' children saw this as the perfect chance to bully and harass someone without any form of repercussion. Who would believe the word of a child no one knows over the child of a prestigious clan member, and they knew it. So they sought me out constantly to harass and bully me for months, which at first wasn't too bad, but it gradually got worse to the point that they physically hurt me. My pain was their enjoyment, since I could not fight back. That isn't true, said Sum softly. She couldn't believe that her son that she had raised would do such a thing to another human being like that. But she could not lie to herself over the fact that her son had gotten fairly arrogant over the years, and despite her best efforts to snuff it out, it persisted to this day. "Oh, but it is," said Naruto as he held up his hand and pulled off his glove. Sim saw a massive scar that went right down the center of his hand that looked like a stab-wound scar, but judging by the size and the irregularities of the shape, it had to have been multiple stabs since the end bits were in all directions. This scar had remained, and even his own bloodline could not heal it since he had gotten it after the scar had solidified onto his hand like it was slashed. The day that solidified my hatred for them was on exactly 1 year after my mother's death. They had found me crying over my mother's grave and took turns beating me black and blue, all the while laughing about how worthless I was, and that Cammy herself agreed and had taken my mother away from me as a sign to simply do the world a favor and take my own life. I had finally had enough, and they grew angry that I mustered up the courage to fight back for the first time in my life. This was the end result, since they held me down and took turns stabbing the very hand I used to throw a punch at them. This scar has reminded me to this day of my hatred towards those who hunted me down like I was an animal to hurt me for their sick amusement. Actions have consequences, and Kiba's have led to this, since the boy he scared like this grew up with hatred in his heart and the thirst for vengeance. So it is no one's fault other than his own, since he chose to go down that path. "I understand," said Sim in grief, that she had failed to see this monstrous side of her son to stop it. "But can you heal him?" "I refuse," said Naruto, "since I did this to ensure that the rest of his life he will be reminded of his greatest mistake, which was hurting me for his sick amusement. So now he gets to waste away as a useless nothing that he has always claimed I was, without a means to recover or even the means to pass on his genetics. Till one day he will beg for someone to put him out of his misery, and when you Sim his own mother don't have the heart to end his life, let me know, since I have no qualms about doing it." Naruto then kicked Sim onto her back, which caused her daughter Hana, who was close to her, to growl a bit before she suffered the same way as Sim had, with tears in her eyes. "Now I want to know one thing before I leave here today," said Naruto as he placed his glove back onto his hand to cover up his scar once again. He then pulled out a small vial of blood that he crushed in his hand and felt the liquid flow down his hand onto the cane as it had when he fought Kiba. "I may not seem like it with my reputation of killing that earned me the title Surgeon of Death, throwing doubt on my claims, but I would rather seek a peaceful resolution to my problems if presented with one over the usual means of violence. I am a doctor, and I prefer to heal over killing. I do not seek out enemies to slaughter, yet I will not stand idly by as my friends and loved ones suffer, and will do all in my power to protect them from harm. You have let it be known that your clan now has a vendetta against me for my actions against Kiba, which means that you will not only hunt me down, but will also seek out other means to lure me into an ambush to kill, since that is how you shinobi operate. This puts those who I call my friends at risk, and I can't have that. I don't want to fight against those who have not wronged me personally." "Why are you telling me this?" asked Sim as she weakly tried to move Naruto's foot off her chest, but whatever force had forced her entire clan to their knees had sapped much of her strength as well, so she did not have the power to move it from its position. "Because I think ahead, since it comes with the territory," said Naruto with a glare, "and I have a feeling that if I simply walked away that you would seek to harm my own family in the future if I was ever lucky enough to have one. So I would rather nip this in the bud here and now." That last bit was laced with a fair bit of anger. But he used the blood on his cane and formed into a spear tip and held it mere centimeters away from her throat. Sim looked at him once more and saw that same shadowy figure her and the rest of her clan had seen when they attacked them. This time it was poised to attack like it was going to swallow her whole in a manner that would leave nothing if it did. "So I will ask you this here and now, once and only once. Will you let this vendetta go and forgive me for seeking my just vengeance? Or must I bloody my hands with your clan here and now, going down the lines of succession until I find someone who will?" Sim looked at him with utter shock that seeped deep into her very soul, since she knew that he was telling the truth when he said that he would kill them one by one if push came to shove. In a sick, twisted way she could respect that, since the boy had come from nothing and had overcome everything life had to throw at him to obtain the balls and threaten an entire clan known for their ferocity. She weighed the option given to her in her mind and thought it out fully. She knew that whatever power this kid had to subdue her clan like this would eventually have to end, since all powers required energy of some source and his would eventually run out. So with that being said, she had no idea how long that would take or even how many of her family would die before then. Her worst fear was that in the end their clan would end up like the Uchiha, with nothing more than a few members that would then be tasked with repopulating the clan towards greater numbers. While she would always hold anger towards the man who crippled her son, she was the clan head and had to think of it as a whole and not just one person. So in the end she simply nodded her head to show that she agreed with his offer. With that, Naruto retracted the blood from his cane and felt as it seeped into the pores on his arm. He held his hand out to help her up to her feet. Once she was there, he began to walk away from the clan, who all backed away from him, since any man who could force an entire clan to submit like that was not someone worth fucking with. Many had heard what Naruto had said to some about his actions towards Kiba, and most if not all of them agreed to themselves that if they had been in the same situation that they would have done as he had if given the chance. Some saw Naruto disappear into the distance, and as she saw him disappear from sight a single thought came to her mind. She would question her son on his actions as a young child. She would do it in a way that he could not lie to her, and if Naruto was telling the truth she would let this vendetta go, since his actions were not only legal given the fact they had been part of the Chunin exams and genin were known to die in them, but she would have done it too. She mentally prepared for that talk she was going to have with her son, all the while in the back of her mind she knew that Naruto was telling the truth on the matter. Naruto had checked his watch and saw that even with that random ambush that ended in his victory, not much time had gone by. So he began to walk around to try and find something to do, since he had time to waste until he met up with the rest of his group and left the village with them. And yet no matter where he walked he could not find anything worth his time, and as such just kept walking. Just when he had assumed that he would remain bored until the moment where they all left, he heard a voice call out his name from the distance. He saw a man who was clearly a Hyuga, which Naruto could clearly see from the attire as well as his eyes. He saw that the man was carrying a folder in his hands, which made Naruto wonder what it was. "Hold on for a moment, young man," said the man as he caught up to Naruto. Once he did, he took a second to catch his breath, since he had full-on sprinted to find Naruto once he heard about where he was located. "Are you the one known as the Surgeon of Death?" "That I am," said Naruto as he faced the man fully. He saw no hide or bandana on his forehead, so he was a main branch member. "What can I do for you, good sir?" "My daughter was hurt recently, and is in need of immediate medical attention," said the man. "I was told by the head doctor at the hospital that only someone of Tsunade's skill would be able to help her, since the damage was too extensive. The problem is that Tsunade is not in the village, and it would take too long for her to come back and help her. I heard that you were in the village and had various members of my family seek you out, so I could find you." "Well, I'm happy to help if you are willing to pay my fee," said Naruto. "And I am guessing what you have there is her medical charts, so that I can look over them and see exactly what needs to be done to aid her?" "That they are," said the man as he handed them to Naruto. While he was loath to have to pay what he assumed would be far higher prices for medical aid than what he would regularly pay for in the Konoha hospital. Yet the Surgeon of Death had an amazing record when it came to medical field, so it was an easy pill to swallow his pride. "May I ask your name?" said Naruto as he took the file to look over it. "My name is Hayashi Hyuga," said Hayashi with a bit of arrogance in his voice, like it was a privilege for someone like Naruto to know his name. "And my daughter Hinata is the one in need of medical aid." "Oh," said Naruto as he looked over the file he was given. Apparently Neji had done far more damage than even he thought possible using just his hands, and saw why someone of his medical skill was needed to fix her up. "So the cheater requires aid." "Excuse me," said Hayashi in a slightly pissed tone. He didn't like hearing his daughter insulted like Naruto had just done. "I called your daughter a cheater, my good sir," said Naruto as he handed the file back to him, since he saw all he needed to see. "How dare you!" shouted Hayashi in anger. "Do you know who you are speaking to?" "The father of a cheater," said Naruto with a smirk. "Yes, I know who you are. I am a Hyuga, and you will give me the respect I deserve." "So what if you are a Hyuga?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "I am not from this village, nor do I care if you are from a clan. We all have the same organs and weaknesses, and while I will admit that your eyes are able to see what mine can't, I am a doctor and know how to do what you do without them. You're not special in my book." "You filthy commoner!" shouted Hayashi, whose face was starting to turn red in anger that this brat had insulted his entire clan. "And yet I am a filthy commoner that you spent so long seeking out to aid your cheating daughter," said Naruto with a chuckle. "My daughter is not a cheater as you claim. She fought her own cousin in the Chunin exams and nearly lost. Before he could win, she used a seal that I hear was put on him years ago to subdue him. That, sir, is called a rigged fight, and as many people know, that is called cheating, so your daughter is a cheater." Naruto could honestly see where Hinata had gotten her arrogance from if this was how her father acted to people. Enough, said Hayashi through strained teeth since this conversation was getting out of hand. Will you help my daughter or not? Oh, I will help her, said Naruto with a wave of his hand. That was never an issue. It's just that she is a cheater and I wanted you to know it. Keep your opinions to yourself, said Hayashi as he took a deep breath to calm himself. Noted, said Naruto with a frown. But before I head to the hospital to help your daughter, there is something you must know. The damage done to your daughter's organs is beyond repair and requires new ones to replace them. Now, while most people who come to me for an organ transplant wait for a bit while it get the proper one they need so as to complete the operation, your daughter does not have that kind of time. So you have to make a tough decision here, since the only way she will survive is if you sacrifice someone else, since the organs she needs are vital ones that people can't live without. And the organs needed have to be from a close family member such as a brother, sister, or cousin. So ask yourself if you are willing to kill someone else to save your cheating daughter's life? Hayashi took all this information in stride and growled at the added insult on the end. He thought hard about what Naruto said, and his eyes opened wide since he had the perfect person to sacrifice so that his daughter may live. Please head to the hospital, said Hayashi with determination in his voice. I'll get what you need. Some family, said Naruto to himself as Hayashi rushed off to get who he was going to get. You can feel the love within it. Naruto then walked towards the hospital where he was met by a few branch members who were there to protect the room Hinata was in while she awaited her surgery. Hayashi had told them that Naruto was coming to help Hinata. He walked into the room and sat in a chair in the corner, and pulled out a journal and began to scribble in it. Hinata was fast asleep since she was saving her strength, so she was unaware of the added presence. Soon enough Hayashi arrived with Neji, who was bound and gagged as he struggled feebly to try and break free from his bindings. Is this how your family works? Said Naruto with a frown. You sacrificed the one to beat your daughter so as to wipe away the shame of her losing? I brought you what you required, said Hayashi angrily as he shoved Neji forward. Neji fell forward and landed on his stomach and began to growl in anger towards Naruto as well, since he would not go so easily and would fight like a man possessed the second he was out of these bindings. Now heal my daughter. Okay, said Naruto as he pulled out 2 different receipts. Now I am willing to offer you a bit of a deal here. Since this young man is going to die, I wish to keep the organs that are not needed so as to transplant into others who will need them in the future. If you agree to that, then you will receive a discount. Otherwise you pay full price. Do whatever you want to the boy, said Hayashi with a snarl, but I demand his eyes back. That is non-negotiable. Fine, said Naruto with a shrug, since I don't really care for them. I do better with my own, thank you. You dare mock our dojutsu? Your dojutsu is fine against others, but I am able to slice your arms off from a distance, which makes it a moot point since you can't get close enough to do any real damage to me. But we are not here to discuss what-ifs, we are here to heal your daughter. Now I want payment as soon as I return with her, which you have my word as a doctor that I will heal her and return her safely. I just have to perform the surgery in my own operating room. So let me get this done and over with while you go and collect my money. Naruto then pulled out a needle and stabbed Neji with it in a pressure point to make his body go numb so that he wouldn't fight back. He summoned his door and picked up Hanata and walked her through it and placed her on the operating table. He then walked back out and grabbed Neji and walked back into his operating room, but not before turning his head to glare at the man who would kill his nephew just to save the life of his monster of a daughter. He then closed the door, and it disappeared behind him. Once inside, he injected Hinata with a drug to make her sleep as well as Neji. He then proceeded to operate on Hinata. He had lied when he said that she needed transplants since all the damage done to her he could heal, it just took some time to do it. But with the help of shadow clones he was able to cut the time down to a fraction since they all worked on separate organ each. Once done with, he put her back together and deactivated the room. Once put back together he smirked as he pulled out a container that he then opened up. Inside of it was a small syringe filled with a gray liquid that he took out and injected into Hinata. This was a virus, one that was made to be undetectable as well as slow-growing. What it would do over time, which if his tests and calculations were correct would be within the next year, she would go blind. But not only that, but her muscles would begin to atrophy as well, all leading her to become a weak heiress and booted from her oh-so-prized position of power since she will lose the strength to maintain it. She could still get pregnant, but the way her body would grow weak over the following year, she would die in childbirth if she ever even attempted to do so. In this way the child had a chance to not learn her mother's arrogance since she would not be alive to teach it to her daughter. Once everything was done with Hinata, he walked over to Neji, who he had placed into a chair, and injected him with adrenaline to wake him back up. Neji woke up with a start, and began to wildly swing his arms around in a rage. Naruto opened his palm for a second before he closed it, doing so grabbed Neji's arms with his wires so that he couldn't move from his spot. "Please calm down," said Naruto simply. "I won't let you kill me so that arrogant bitch will live," he shouted with all the rage he could muster. "I'm not going to kill you," said Naruto simply with a raised eyebrow. "Bullshit," said Neji, who was not buying it. "I heard what you said to Hayashi." "And yet I healed Hinata already," said Naruto as he pointed towards her unconscious form, "and I did it without harvesting your organs to do so." "So then why am I here?" said Neji with questioning eyes that were still filled with rage. "You don't remember me, do you?" said Naruto as he shook his head. "Can't quite say I do," said Neji. Naruto didn't say anything else, but he removed his glove from his scarred hand and held it up for Neji to see with his own eyes. Neji looked at it in shock since he remembered Naruto via that scar alone. He had been there that day, not to hurt the poor boy like the others, but since it was his duty to protect Hinata since he was a branch member, and she was a main. He had watched as they had stabbed him in the hand repeatedly. He had to leave with the group when they did, but he had left Naruto, who at this point was crying while bleeding over his own mother's grave, with some bandages to help seal up the wound. "I can tell it by your eyes," said Naruto as he saw it, "that you remember me. You were literally the only person in this entire village other than my mother to help me in some way, shape, or form. To you it might seem small, but to me it meant the world since no one else gave a damn about me." "So what do you plan to do with me?" asked Neji, who was no longer afraid of Naruto since the man was not hostile to him. "I plan to repay you for what you have done," said Naruto as he retracted the wires. Neji felt them loosen from his arms and rubbed them since it itched quite a bit. "But all I did was give you some bandages," said Neji with a confused look in his eyes. "I don't see why you would help me like this." "It's not that I am talking about," said Naruto as he laughed. "You see, I have a vendetta against those who hurt me all my childhood, your cousin included. I had plans in play to get said vengeance against them, yet you did it for me when it came to your cousin. So it is only fair that I repay you for taking the full force of the repercussions of the event. So what do you have in mind to help me? As you heard, you are all but dead to the clan since they think that I am going to chop you up to save her life, but that is not what is going to happen. So what I am going to do is give you a fresh start, the likes that I myself have had when I left this village to seek a life elsewhere." "But what about the seal on my head?" said Neji since he knew that he could never be free with it on his head. "Can you remove it?" "Not by normal means," said Naruto with a smirk. "What do you mean by that?" asked Neji, who was far more confused than he was before. "What I am going to tell you stays between us," said Naruto as he looked at Neji with a look that promised pain if he told the soul about it. Neji understood and simply nodded his head. "I have a means to clone your body. But it will just be your body since seals are not genetic. Once fully formed I can transfer you into it, fully free from the seal on your head. But while I am doing so I will make a few alterations so that you can hide your identity, such as different natural hair color and pupils in your eyes while still being able to use your Byakugan." "And how am I to know that you are telling me the truth about all this?" asked Neji, who once again was not fully believing what Naruto had said. "I understand that trust is earned," said Naruto with a sigh. "So I will tell you something that I have never told anyone else. Not my closest of friends, or even my girlfriend. I will trust you with my secret if you will trust me enough to help you live a life worth living." "What is this secret of yours?" asked Neji, who was genuinely wondering what it was that he could be hiding from so many people. "I am the bastard son of Minato Namikaze," said Naruto with a growl, since he never liked to say that since the man was no father of his after all he had done to him. Neji looked at him entirely shocked by what he had heard. "But how?" was all Neji was capable of saying since his mind was trying to process it. How was the son of their Hokage treated so badly like he was? Yet he couldn't say any more since Naruto once again stabbed him with a drug to put him asleep. Once he was out of it, Naruto pushed open the secret door he had and entered into it. Inside the room was multiple tanks filled with liquids of all sizes. The smaller ones were cloning individual organs that would then be transplanted into the person they were made for, while the larger ones, of which there were only 3 of them, were used for entire people. He stripped Neji of his clothes and put him in one of the pods so that his genetics could be cloned in the machine next to it. Naruto saw the machine turn on and saw his genetic makeup. He punched in a few things to change his appearance, but other than that there was no need to change him. Before he had put Neji into the pod, he had made sure to take Neji's eyes since Hayashi wanted them. Once the secret door was closed, he picked up Hinata and walked her out of the place, and put her back into her hospital bed in Konoha. He waited there for a bit until Hayashi showed up, when Naruto handed him a vial with Neji's eyes. Hayashi gave him the money that was owed, and once paid in full, Naruto saw that it was near the time he had set for their departure. So he set out and met his teammates, where they then went through his door so that he could take them home to prepare for the last portion of the exams. A day later, Naruto had decided to use the day before he headed to the Cain residence, since he had sent a message to them that he would come tomorrow, to seek out a plant he had been meaning to find yet never had the chance to do so since he had so much on his plate for the past several months. He had thought now was the perfect time to do so since Haku was still not in a talking mood for reasons that he could not understand. Luckily for him, though, Zabuza had provided that bit of information shortly before he left to find the plants he was seeking. Turned out Haku and Kuratsuchi had gotten into a heated argument over the fact that Kuratsuchi was apparently in love with him since he had saved her life in the past, a fact that made Naruto facepalm himself since he had not seen the obvious signs, and it made him feel like an idiot that he didn't see the very clear signs. She called Haku out on stealing her man from her, which then got into a heated argument with Haku boasting that she slept with him, and then things escalated from there. Now the 2 of them had a bet going on that whoever beat the other in the exams would be his girlfriend, and to make sure there was no cheating on the matter they agreed to not talk to him about it. Apparently that rule did not apply towards Zabuza since Haku had gone directly over to his place to stay at for the month, and told him all about it. Naruto groaned since he wondered just when he became labeled as a prize between 2 women. He wanted to talk Haku out of the whole silly thing, but Zabuza had lost the color in his face when he told Naruto not to do that. Apparently Haku was far more stubborn when it came to what she deemed as serious matters and would use Saban to make people get the point as painfully as possible. So he decided to run this errand instead of risking his health. He had been walking in what seemed like circles for the past few hours, and the map he had did not help at all in the matter. He sighed as he stood there for a minute to ponder exactly what to do right now. He was knocked out of his pondering though when he was forced to dodge multiple shurikens sent his way. "Sweet merciful Kami," said Naruto as he prepared himself for the fight ahead, "can't I simply go anywhere nowadays without being attacked one way or another?" "Leave now," said a voice that Naruto could not tell what direction it was coming from. "You are trespassing on land that is not yours." "I am?" asked Naruto as he looked at his map again. "To be honest, I am completely lost here. Where exactly am I? This map is not helping me." "You are near the land of Taki," said the voice, which Naruto was able to tell at least came from a woman. "And if you don't leave now, then I will kill you where you stand." "Taki," said Naruto to himself. "Well then at least I'm in the right area." "Right area for what?" "This is ridiculous," said Naruto with a sigh. "Could you please show yourself? I'm not here to attack you and I feel silly yelling at what are basically trees." "Fine," said the woman, "but I want you to know that if you try anything then I will kill you where you stand." "If I had a ryo for every time I heard that threat," said Naruto to himself under his breath. He heard a rustle of leaves behind him and turned around to see just who exactly he was talking to. The woman was a petite, androgynous, tan-skinned kunoichi who wore an orange clip in her short, layered mint green hair that matched her eye color, which were also orange. Her outfit consisted of a short, sleeveless white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short white apron skirt over it. Her forehead protector was worn on her right arm and also carried a cylindrical object in red wrapping on her back. "Well, hello there," said Naruto with a smile to try and ease the hostile tension she had towards him. "My name is Naruto. May I inquire as to what yours might be?" "My name is Fu," said the now named Fu. "Now explain why you are here. If you are a threat to the village, then I will kill you." "There is no need for such hostility like that," said Naruto as he put his hands up in surrender. He could understand a guard doing their duty to protect their home, so he was not mad at all the threats of murder towards his person like this. I was fully unaware that there was even a village out here, so I am not trying to invade or attack it. Then why are you out here in the first place? Asked Fu with a tone that basically said that she didn't believe him. I am trying to find a plant that grows in this area, said Naruto simply. A plant? Asked Fu in a confused tone of voice. You came all the way out here to the middle of the forest for just a plant? Yeah, said Naruto as he pulled the book that he learned about the plant in the first place and began to flip through the pages to find the one he wanted to find. I am a doctor, and this plant will help me in my research. You are a doctor? Asked Fu as she lessened her stance. For some reason she was beginning to believe that Naruto was not a threat, and the demon sealed within her was whispering the same thing as well. Yes, said Naruto, and you being here actually might help me since I have no idea where the hell I am. The map I brought along is of no help. Have you ever seen these plants before? Naruto then moved forward in a non-threatening manner since he was not trying to have her attack him. He showed her the picture that he wanted to show her and saw as Fu looked at it with recognition in her eyes. I have, said Fu with a nod of her head, but why would you want those? They are highly toxic. That's why I want them, said Naruto before he saw Fu's accusing stare, and no, I am not going to use it to poison someone, so put yourself at ease there. Then what possible reason do you have for them? I am trying to make powerful antitoxins, said Naruto as he pulled out a personal journal with all the information he had on the subject. He handed it to Fu to show her that he was telling the truth, and while it was true that she didn't understand about half of what was written since she was not a medic, she saw that he was indeed telling the truth and making antitoxins. And the way it works is that I need to build a base before I build from there. I want these plants since they are considered one of the most poisonous plants around, and will make a good base. So can you help me find them? Because I will probably be walking around aimlessly for hours with the slim chance of ever finding them without your help. Well, sure, said Fu as she began to lead the way towards where the plants were. She knew that Naruto would not attack her since she sensed no hostility from him in the slightest, and to be honest, she was grateful for the human interaction. She had been forced to live out in the woods and guard the village from attack for years and didn't really get to interact with people other than the occasional nin who tried to infiltrate the village. She had a friend in the past by the name of Shibuki, but he had just abandoned her out of the blue, and it had broken her heart that her only friend had done so. So she was happy to spend some time with a person who was not hostile towards her. It took about 30 minutes, but they eventually reached a place where the plants grew, which was a marshy area near a cave. Naruto donned thick gloves that he had to handle things like this since the poison could enter through skin contact alone. Once on, he picked quite a few samples and placed them into a container that he then sealed away for later. They then made their way back to where Naruto had met Fu in the first place. I thank you for your assistance, said Naruto with a smile, and I would like to know if there is anything that I could do to help you in return? Huh? Asked Fu, who was surprised that he said that. I was taught that you should help those who help you, said Naruto, and since you helped me find these plants that I was having trouble finding, I wish to offer something to aid you in return. So is there anything that I can do to help you? Well, said Fu as she rubbed the back of her head and smiled a bit in embarrassment, since her request seemed kind of silly. If you wouldn't mind, could you stay and talk with me for a while? You are one of the only people who I have got to talk to in years. So a bout of conversation is what you wish, said Naruto with a smile. That I can do quite easily. But since it is rare for you to have such a thing, allow me to make this a better experience for you. Wait right here. I promise I will be back in about 10 minutes, of that you have my word. Naruto then summoned up a door to his operating room, which he entered. This surprised Fu since the action of summoning a door like that was odd to say the least. Yet the door disappeared from thin air just as quickly as it had appeared. Fu felt a bit sad as it did, since the memories of her only friend leaving that day with the promise to return later only to never return again came to mind. But she would give Naruto the benefit of the doubt since he said he would be back in 10 minutes. So she waited 10 minutes. But he had still not returned, and it made Fu sadder than before since she felt as though she had been lied to for the second time in her life. She felt as tears began to form in her eyes since she feared that she would forever be alone in these woods, stuck remaining the guard dog of a village that hated her for what she had sealed within her. After 20 minutes had gone by from the time of his departure, she was just about to head home when the door reappeared. Naruto then came through with a table in hand, while several clones of himself came with chairs and a tea set that was fancy in design. Sorry for the wait, said Naruto apologetically. I moved my tea set from my house to my office and forgot where I put it. I nearly tore up my house before I remembered where it was. What is all of this? Asked Fu in surprise that he had brought all this just to converse with her. I have learned that some of the best conversations are had over a cup of tea, said Naruto as his shadow clones disappeared once they had set the table. On it was the tea set with hot plate heating up the kettle and had a fancy tin that Naruto opened up to show that it was full of cookies. Fu's mouth watered when she saw them since she had not had a cookie in years and she never knew how much she craved for one until the moment she saw them. Naruto gestured for her to sit and pushed the tin for her to take a cookie at her own leisure. And Fu had to admit that she was happy for the first time in a long time as she took one of the cookies offered and bit into it. She stopped after one bite since it was far more delicious than she had expected. Do you like the cookies? Asked Naruto with a smile as he picked up match and struck it to light it up. He then put it on the hot plate to light it up, and then put the kettle on so that the water could boil. He then spooned out some tea leaves into the 2 teacups he had. They are amazing, said Fu as she took another as she gulped down the first. That they are, said Naruto with a smile. I got them from a bakery in Spring Country. They are a bit pricey, but they are completely worth it in my book. But while you are in a good mood, I have a quick question to ask of you. Why do you live out here of all places? Shouldn't you be in the village? Fu stopped eating her cookie when Naruto had asked that since she feared answering that question. She had always been told most of her life that Jinchuriki were hated throughout the world and treated far worse than how she was here with the isolation. Now here was a man who had listened to her request of staying and talking to her, and she feared that he would hate her if he knew the truth about her. You don't have to answer that, said Naruto since he had thought about it for a minute and recognized the scenario. You are a Jinchuriki, aren't you? Fu was speechless that he had figured it out from her lack of answering and feared that he would just up and leave. No need to fret, said Naruto as he waved his hand to try and ease her fear. I am not going to start hating you simply because of the demon sealed within you. I judge people on their actions, not their burdens. Oh, said Fu as she sighed a heavy breath of relief. By this point the water was boiling and so Naruto poured the hot water into the cups to mix with the tea leaves. Naruto and Fu conversed for quite some time, which both of them thoroughly enjoyed since they had a lot in common. They had both been loners for a good chunk of their lives, but while Naruto's life had improved over time, Fu was still confined to her post on the outskirts of the village. Fu explained how she had a friend named Shibuki long ago, but he had just abandoned her. Naruto felt pity for her since he had been the same exact way with the lack of friends and the hatred against him for reasons that he didn't fully understand why it was happening in the first place. Fu at this point had begun to cry since the pain of that day had never left her, nor did she have any form of counseling or person to get over her grief. Naruto had cheered her up though in the end by wiping the tears from her eyes and gave her a hug. She reciprocated it and hugged back hard. Naruto understood that everyone needed at least one friend and he held out his hand and offered to be that one that she needed. She had smiled as he offered and accepted. But their sappy, yet happy moment was ruined when a scythe on a chain came out of nowhere and slammed into the table, destroying not only it but the tea set and the cookies as well. Naruto and Fu looked to see just who the hell had ruined their good time. Standing there were 2 Akatsuki members, which Naruto easily recognized from the red cloud black cloaks. One of them had medium-length gray hair that was slicked back and distinctive purple eyes, while most of his chest was exposed as he pulled back his weapon and slung it over his shoulder. The second man was a very tall tan-skinned man with long dark brown hair. His eyes had an unusual coloring, green irises, no pupils and red sclera. Naruto had done his research after the Akatsuki tried to recruit him, and he knew exactly who these people were. Haiden and Kakuzu. Both deemed immortal in their own way. Oh fuck, said Naruto as he signed in anger as he prepared for the fight that was going to happen. Why they were here was the question. Could he not just have a moment of peace? Chapter 7 Surgical Removal of Threats. Naruto stood there as his eye twitched in anger of the whole situation he had just found himself in. Fu could sense the anger resonating off of his body and took a few steps away from. Before we do anything else, growled Naruto in rage, I just want you to understand how much you fucked up here. You destroyed a tea set that, while it was not valuable price-wise, it was a gift from a woman who died and left it to me since she knew I loved her tea. It was valuable to me since I had good memories to go with it. Then there are the cookies that you destroyed. Are you seriously getting mad at us because Hayden destroyed your cookies? Asked Kakuzu with a raised eyebrow, since that had to be the dumbest reason to get mad that he had ever heard in his entire life. Yes, actually, since they are a bit pricey, as well as the fact that my whole life I have been taught to not waste food, said Naruto as his eye twitched in anger, and you destroying it is doing just that. Well, how about we make it up to you and simply kill you so it doesn't bother you anymore, said Kakuzu with a chuckle. Well, that seems like a good idea, said Naruto with a sinister chuckle of his own. I am gonna have to pass on it since I don't feel like dying now or any time in the near future, to be honest. Lord Jashin decrees that you die in his name here and now, shouted Hayden. Look, crazy priest man, said Naruto as he held his hands together in front of his mouth before he pointed in Hayden's direction with two of them. I am gonna tell you here and now that I don't give a damn about your religion, so just stop it with all that. You will pay for your insolence, shouted Hayden before he threw his scythe at Naruto once again. Naruto didn't move at all, which caused Fu to shout out his name in fear that he would get hurt from this. But her face went from fear to surprise when she saw him catch the weapon with his bare hand. What made it stranger for her was the fact that his hand had turned jet black as he did. Well, said Naruto with a heavy sigh as he began to glare at the men who had come to attack him. He had a feeling that they would do so at some point, since they were a highly feared group of mercenaries and he had managed to kill 2 of their members. So he figured they would try and kill him at some point, so he took it upon himself to research who he could find out about the members, so he was prepared for when they eventually did. Now you have only pissed me off more than before. You will not leave here alive, shouted Hayden as he tried to pull his weapon back, but surprisingly was unable to, since Naruto had a firm grip on the thing and was not giving any sort of leeway to do so. Quick question before we continue, said Naruto with all the seriousness he could muster in his voice. Who sent you to kill me? We are not here for you, boy, said Kakuzu as he stood back to watch what was happening unfold a bit before he planned to do anything. He was not friends with Hayden in any sense of the word. It was just due to the fact that Hayden could not kill him like he did the several other members he had been partnered up with in the past that they traveled together like this. We are here for the Jinchuriki. And why do you need Fu? Asked Naruto, who was genuinely curious as well as confused as to why they would need her. True, she was a Jinchuriki, but they were the most prized things in the major villages as well as Taki, even though the people don't act like they are, and by taking them would invoke the equivalent of a war to whoever did so. Last he had heard, the Akatsuki organization was small with but a dozen members, so how the hell would they be able to deal with the ramifications of doing this? That is none of your business, said Kakuzu, mostly since it will not help you when you're dead. Fair enough, said Naruto simply as his hand began to crackle with electricity, counter-shock. The electrical current passed through the blades of the scythe he was holding, and then traveled through the rope itself since the design had metal within it. It was done so the rope was stronger as a whole and yet still flexible enough to be used as a rope, but right now it was being used as a means of conducting electrical currents towards the intended target. Hayden shouted in pain as he was hit with a massive surge of electricity, which was akin to being struck by lightning. Naruto then quickly, yet flawlessly used a kunai, one of several he had for situations like this one here, and cut the rope holding the scythe. He then threw it back at Hayden, who was not able to dodge it since he was still suffering the after effects of being shocked like he did. The weapon pierced his head from an angle, but all the blades had pierced into it. Fu thought he had been dealt with, but Hayden only growled in rage as he pulled his scythe out of his skull and looked at Naruto with a murderous rage look on his face. So what I have heard about you are true then, said Naruto as he pulled out his cane to use in the coming battle. I had heard you were deemed immortal, but to see it firsthand is another thing altogether. Jashin will have your blood. So it is my blood you want, said Naruto with a smirk. He then pulled out a round glass vial of his blood and tossed it a few times in his hand before he threw it to Hayden. Hayden caught it in his hand and looked at it, far more confused than he had ever been before. He had never seen a man willingly toss him, or anyone else for that matter, a vial of their own blood. There you go. 1 bottle of blood from yours truly. Naruto, said Fu with an open-mouthed shocked look on her face that showed that she was still not fully understanding or believing that she had just seen that happen. Why would you give him your blood like that? Are you insane? No, I am not insane, said Naruto as he smiled at her. I am of complete sound mind. I gave him my blood out of a genuine scientific curiosity as to what he would do with it. He then looked back to see Hayden uncorking the vial with a sinister smile on his face before he drank the contents of the container, in a single gulp. Now it was Naruto's turn to look shocked at all this, since that had not been a scenario that had crossed his mind ever, and he had heard of such things happening in the past due to mental illnesses. Naruto at this point was at a complete loss for words. Yet, in the end he began to laugh hard to the point that he held his stomach since it was beginning to hurt from laughing. Now is not the time for laughing, said Fu, who was prepared to fight these men the second they said they were here for her. She would be damned if she would let these creepy men kidnap her. Sure, her life sucked as it was, but from the way they talked about her, her situation would not improve if she went with them. These people are going to kill you if you don't take this seriously. I'm sorry, said Naruto as he finally began to calm himself down from his fit of laughter. He was able to see clear once he wiped the tears from his eyes, since he had laughed so hard and saw that Hayden was drawing a circle around him for some odd reason. But I have to ask you, why the hell did you drink my blood? Hayden uses people's blood to perform his ritual, said Kakuzu simply. There was no harm in answering the boy's questions since Hayden already had his blood, and thus doomed himself, since once the ritual was complete he would die from it easily. Well, that answers my question, said Naruto as he pondered on that bit of information. I assumed he did it due to a mental illness of some sort. A mental illness? Asked Fu with a confused look on her face. There were a few recorded incidents in the past of several different men who genuinely believed they had to drink blood to survive due to mental illness. I am a doctor, so I know what I am saying. Oh, said Fu as she cringed in her mind, since that was disgusting to hear about out of the blue, and she regretted ever asking that, since now she knew it even was a thing that could happen to someone. But before you continue on with your ritual over there, Hayden, said Naruto as he saw the man's skin turn black with what appeared to be a skeleton tattoo in him that went all the way down his body, at least as he could see since the man's pants blocked a view of his lower body. I feel like telling you why I laughed so hard at your actions. The last words of a dead man, said Hayden with a grin. Go ahead and say them, but know that I will simply forget them afterwards, since they are so very insignificant to me or my Lord Jashin. Thank you kindly, said Naruto with a chuckle. This confused Hayden and Kakuzu, since by all accounts the brat should be begging for mercy right now, yet he was strangely calm through all this. Their leader had warned them about the brat who had killed Kisame and Itachi, and while they had ignored it when told, thinking that the two of them had simply gotten a fat head and died from their pride getting in the way, now they were beginning to think differently than before. So I will tell you 3 very important things about my blood that you foolishly consumed like you did. The first, yet most important fact is that my blood is highly infectious. Wait, said Hayden with a look of confusion plastered onto his face. What? My blood is infectious, said Naruto as he conjured up some of the blood in his arm to leak out of it, and form multiple small balls that he began to twirl like they were stress balls of some sort. I use it as a weapon against my opponent, since my bloodline allows me to use my blood to infect the blood of others in a manner that I have complete control of their bodies. Case in point. It was at this time that Hayden felt his hands fall to his sides and stiffen up to the point that he could not move them at all. Fu simply watched this in fascination, since Naruto had yet to cease to amaze her. But it wasn't only her, but the demon inside her that was impressed as well. The process takes a bit due to multiple factors, said Naruto with a smirk, the main one being just how much blood I throw at you. It doesn't take much, and yet you drank a lot of it, so that only hastened your defeat. You will die in the name of Jashin, said Hayden through strained teeth. He was unable to open his mouth properly to shout out his threat, since Naruto was using his blood to stiffen his body completely in a way that he couldn't move in the slightest. The second thing you need to know, continued Naruto, who was not at all concerned about the threats sent his way. He was paying attention to Kakuzu though, on the off chance he decided to intervene in what he was doing to Hayden. But to his surprise the man just stood there and let Hayden suffer like this without helping him in any way. Is that my blood is explosive as well when I want it to be. So what you consumed was the equivalent of an organic bomb. What the fuck? Shouted Hayden. Yes, but the last thing you need to know about my blood is that it is highly combustible as well. So have fun burning into ash. Naruto smiled as he clicked his fingers, and Hayden began to scream in agony as his entire body burst into flame. This went on for a bit before his body began to collapse upon itself, since it was turned to ash and the wind knocked it over. Well damn, said Kakuzu with a chuckle, you managed to kill Haiden? You don't seem so beat up about that, said Naruto as he twirled his cane in his hand for a bit before he slammed it into the ground so that it stood on its own. Once in place, he put his hands together and cracked his knuckles. To be honest, I couldn't stand the guy. The only reason I was paired with his religious ass was because he could not kill me like he did the other members who were partnered with him in the past. I thought that you were not a shinobi, said Fu, who was starting to wonder if Naruto had lied to her, and if he did, for what reason. I'm not, said Naruto with a simple shake of his head, I am simply a doctor. Yet you have a bloodline ability as well as the skills to kill a powerful enemy in an unorthodox manner. Think about it like this, said Naruto simply, you have trained for so long to fight against and defeat shinobi. You know the basics of the art, so you know how they act, think, plan, the works. Yet I was never trained in the field like you were and taught myself to fight as only a doctor could. That is my key advantage in a fight due to the fact that no one has ever trained to fight a doctor, so they are not prepared for it when I win. I can't fight that logic, said Fu simply with a sigh, since he was right about that. But don't you know, there are some things that can beat smartness and foresight? Said Naruto with a smirk, awkwardness and stupidity can do so easily. The best swordsman in the world doesn't need to fear the second best swordsman in the world. No, the person for him to be afraid of is some ignorant antagonist who has never had a sword in his hand before. He doesn't do the thing he ought to do, and so the expert isn't prepared for him. He does the thing he ought not to do. And often it catches the expert out and ends him on the spot. That sounds like you quoted it from a book, said Fu. And I did, said Naruto, since that quote has been true for me my entire life, as I fought many who thought me weak. Sorry to cut the idle chit-chat short, said Kakuzu, who was fairly pissed that the two of them were basically ignoring him even though he was standing right there in front of them. He was an infamous S-ranked shinobi, and yet they were acting like he wasn't even a problem. But you still have me to deal with, and now that I know about your little blood trick you won't beat me. True, said Naruto as he held up his hand a bit. A clear ring appeared in the palm of his hand. Room. What the hell is this? Asked Kakuzu, since this was not something he had ever seen before. This is my operating room, said Naruto as he stood there with one of his hands behind his back as he used the other to emphasize his point. And within this field of power, I am essentially God. Like hell I would believe that, shouted Kakuzu before he formed the hand seals to blow a massive fireball in Naruto's direction. Naruto simply grinned as the attack got closer, since he was not afraid in the slightest. Tech, said Naruto simply as he used his finger to point upwards. The fireball then turned 90 degrees and soared into the air before it exploded. Is that the best you have to offer against me? Kakuzu was utterly pissed at this point that the brat would not just die already. He wanted to charge forward and attack, since apparently long-range attacks would not work. But Naruto's claim of power while within this field made him think of another approach. So he made to retreat so as to get out of the field and think of a proper plan here. Good plan, said Naruto as he saw Kakuzu make to try and leave his room. He pulled out a kunai that began to glow with green lightning as he pulsed power through it, but too little too late. Shambles. Kakuzu had just made it out of the field of Naruto's power when he suddenly reappeared within it, and to his shock and horror, right next to Naruto himself, who then plunged the kunai into Kakuzu's chest. This operation will destroy your body from the inside out, growled Naruto as he saw Kakuzu convulsing in pain as the attack surged through his body. Gamma knife. Naruto could feel all 5 of the man's hearts pop from within the man's body as his power destroyed him. He had read about this ability in Law's journal, and when he read about Kakuzu and heard the rumors of him having multiple hearts, he was glad to master it so as to eliminate him without too much of an issue. He saw the life begin to leave his eyes before he pulled the blade out, Kakuzu's blood squirting out of the wound. Naruto held out his hand to grab his cane and used the blood of Kakuzu to form a scythe blade that he swung and cut Kakuzu down the middle. This was overkill and he knew it, but when it came to men who were essentially immortal via inhumane means it was kind of essential. Sorry you had to see me like that, said Naruto to Fu with an apologetic voice as he pulled out multiple bottles that he used to collect Kakuzu's blood within and stored for later. That is the reason I try not to fight when I can avoid it. When I fight, I go sadistic with my fighting style since I really don't know how to stop and enjoy it. I don't like that version of myself, so I try and stay away from it when it can be avoided. Completely understandable, said Fu as she waved her hands in a comical way. Sure, Naruto might seem a bit crazy to her, but he was still the only friend she now had and was one even though he knew exactly what she was. She was not one to judge and would give Naruto the benefit of the doubt here. But were you really so pissed off about the cookies? Actually yes, said Naruto, since I was being honest about the whole not wasting food thing. Plus, well... Go on, said Fu with a smirk, I'm actually curious as to what you have to say. Well, the baker has a son who he is training in his craft, said Naruto as he sighed at the thought of the man, and the son is quite effeminate with the clothes to match his personality. Oh, said Fu since she was putting the pieces together, so you are homophobic? No, said Naruto honestly, I have no problems with who people fall in love with. It's just, said Naruto as he was a bit embarrassed to say the next bit. Sweet Kami, said Fu as she began to laugh since she saw it now, he is in love with you, isn't he? Yes, said Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head, but the problem there is that I am straight. Yet he does not care and likes, and I quote, the thrill of the chase, so he continues to do so in some strange hopes to turn me gay. So every time I go and get those cookies, I have to deal with that bit of awkwardness. Naruto growled as his eye twitched since Fu was rolling on the ground laughing hard about this whole thing. More would have been said, but it was at that point that 24 Taki shinobi surrounded him. Fu was scared as she got back to her feet. Halt, said a large man with an eye patch who Naruto guessed was the leader of this group. You are under arrest for the attempted theft of our village Jinchuriki. I was not trying to kidnap Fu, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. She helped me find some plants that grow around here and then we were attacked. You dare leave your post without permission? Said one of the shinobi as he moved to strike Fu across the face. But Naruto was faster and threw a kunai into the man's arm, severing the tendon so it was now useless to him without proper medical treatment. Do not hurt my friend, said Naruto with a murderous look of rage in his eyes. I'll go with you so as to not cause any more problems, but if you hurt her in my presence, and I will make your life a living hell beyond description. Fu couldn't help but blush a bit as she heard Naruto care enough for her to threaten so many men at once. She never thought that a man would do such a thing for her, being a Jinchuriki and all, so this was a nice surprise. Fu then saw as the leader got behind Naruto and roughly shoved Naruto towards the village, but she did notice Naruto give her a smile as a way to tell her not to worry. And for some strange reason, she listened to him. Leader of Taki office. Naruto was brought into the village of Taki, which he was amazed about the layout of the village since most houses were in the trees so that unless you knew what you were looking for you most likely failed to notice it at all. Naruto was led to the building that was obviously the place where the leader of the village worked, and while it was not as grand as those you would see in major villages it was still bigger than the main houses. Naruto was basically shoved inside by the big shinobi with the eye patch that had ordered him to come along in the first place. Naruto really wanted to punch this asshole since he did not like to be shoved like this, but he would not make waves in a village that he could do potential business in the future with since that added to his client list as well as opened up new potential vendors to get rare ingredients to use for medicine. Once inside he was shown the way to the main office and once again shoved into the room. The man inside sitting behind the desk had ink black eyes and long, dark brown hair. He wore a forehead protector symbolizing his shinobi status within the village. He wore gray pants, a green shirt, and shinobi sandals. In addition to his normal outfit, he had a gray shoulder pad on his left shoulder with a brown strap over it. To top it all off he wore a light yellow kimono jacket and light gray pants with a red scarf around his neck and a turquoise haori. From the looks of things he had been in the middle of paperwork and from the amount of stress that appeared on the man's face it had been quite the day. He saw his men bring in another who he had never met in his life, and whenever that happened it meant someone had tried to infiltrate their village, and now he would have to fill out the paperwork for an execution. Sweet merciful Kami, said the man as he slammed his head onto the desk. The amount of paperwork he had to do today had left him exhausted, and he really didn't want to deal with this shit. Now he understood why his father was cranky for a good chunk of his life since he had taken over as the leader of the village once he died protecting it. Why must I be burdened with so much paperwork? He took a quick deep breath to calm himself before he lifted his head up to look at the man they brought to him. I am a fairly busy man, he said with a sigh, so let's get right to the point here. Who are you and why have you seen fit to try and invade our village? Invade? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Why do you assume that I invaded? Because you are here before me, said the man, and under heavy guard as well, so it's apparent that you tried to invade us. Sir, said the eye-patch shinobi, he didn't try to invade us. Then why is he here, said the leader as he rubbed his temples as he got a headache. Naruto saw him suffering from one and knew he had the medicine that could help if given the chance to do so. He was caught talking to the demon bitch out in the forest, said the eye-patch shinobi, and from what we heard he was trying to convince her to leave, most likely to try and join another village to enhance their own power. Is this true? Asked the leader with a quizzical look on his face. If it was true, then the consequences of the matter would be even direr for Naruto, since this village really hated it when people tried to steal their village weapon. Sure, they hated the young woman with all the hatred they could possibly give, but she was their weapon or slave to some who thought about it like that. Who are you? To answer the first question first, said Naruto with a deep sigh. The man who brought him in had only arrived at the end when he had killed Haiden and his partner, so how would he know about what the hell they were talking about beforehand? Naruto had a sneaking suspicion that they had been listening near the end, which infuriated him to know that they just stood there and watched him as well as Fu get attacked like that, and only showed themselves when he was weakened in the fight. But why he thought that he was trying to convince Fu to leave was a mystery, since he had not. Sure, he had told of what the world offered, but not to convince her of anything. I was having a simple conversation with the young lady. When has that become a crime? Because it is a fairly stupid one if it is. Naruto then felt the man shove him yet again, and it took a lot of willpower to not simply slug this guy and be done with it. Sure, the man had height and muscle mass on him, but he had skills and bloodlines to easily counter that advantage. Don't you dare lie to our leader, you little brat, said the shinobi. We watched you converse with the demon and overheard your plans to try and get her to leave. So you were standing there when I was talking to Fu? Asked Naruto as he glared at the man. Yet you did nothing as two members of the Akatsuki came and attacked us. Some shinobi you are. How dare you! Shouted the man as he made to punch this brat. Stand down, said the leader as he slammed his fist onto his desk. He had gotten to his feet and done so in an attempt to end this situation before it escalated into something far worse than it could be if nothing was done about it. Yes, sir, said the shinobi, though from his tone of voice it was with great reluctance. Now, said the leader as he sat back down, since he did not need to intervene in this conflict physically, I will ask you once again who you are? Oh, I am sorry, said Naruto with a chuckle, where are my manners? My name is Naruto, and I am known throughout the elemental countries as the Surgeon of Death. His response made the men look at him in shock, none more than the jackass who had essentially tried to prove he was such a big man by bullying him with his shoving. The man began to heavily sweat in a comical way as he slowly inched away from Naruto. The man had heard about what Naruto was capable of doing to those who angered him, and did not want to end up like that. Oh, what is this? Said Naruto with a sinister smirk. You don't want to shove me around like you were before? Come on, try and do it once or twice more for a laugh. We'll see who is laughing in the end. No, said the man faintly as the color in his face disappeared in fear. That's okay. Leave us alone, said the leader as he waved the shinobi out of the room so that he could talk with Naruto in private. Are you sure about that? Said another one of the shinobi in confusion that their leader would send them all out of the room, leaving him vulnerable like that. This is the Surgeon of Death I am speaking to, said the leader. He is a neutral man who is allied to none of the major villages or even has home in one, so he is not hurt to harm us or invade our village in some way. I am happy to see that you know of me, said Naruto as he saw the shinobi that escorted him leave. He made the man who shoved him shudder as he held up a fist and stuck out his thumb to use it in a cutthroat motion. He had no intention to kill or even hurt the man, but he didn't know this, and that's how it would be, since it makes introductions so much easier. Now while you know who I am afraid that I don't know your name. Oh right, said the man, my name is Shibuki and I am the leader of the minor shinobi village of Taki. Oh, said Naruto seriously, so you are Shibuki? Wait a minute, said Shibuki, since he was surprised that someone with such infamy as Naruto would know who he was when not many people of their village was known to outsiders at all. You know who I am? You were Fu's friend, said Naruto with a growl, since he could not understand abandoning a friend like this man had done, nor would he ever do so without just cause that his friend would understand so that they would not feel betrayed by his departure. And you abandoned her to her fate out in the woods. Well shit, said Shibuki in surprise. Fu told you about that, did she? I'm surprised that she trusted anyone enough to even talk to someone about that. No thanks to you, said Naruto with disdain. Look, said Shibuki with a sigh as he prepared himself, I can explain. I don't see how you can explain what you did, said Naruto, since in all honesty he couldn't imagine a single way to explain it. It was not my fault. That's what everyone says when caught in their bullshit. Stop! Shouted Shibuki in anger that Naruto was not giving him a chance to explain himself. Let me explain my case before you judge me. Okay, said Naruto with a sigh, I'll let you do so, but know that this explanation better be good since I don't see how you can explain it. My father led Takigakyo well for many years until his death after drinking the hero water, trying to protect his village when it came under attack by foreign powers, said Shibuki in sadness as he remembered his father. The water granted him temporary strength enhancements, but shortened his life that led to a rather premature demise. His position as leader was passed on to me when he perished. I'm not seeing how this explains things, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. I was friends with Fu in my youth, which my father was okay with since he did not see her as a weapon as most of the people in this village do. But he warned me that one day that I would take his place as the leader of this village, and in doing so I would have to sever ties with her. I know what I did was wrong and that I hurt her by not even telling her the truth on the matter. But I am the leader of this village, and as so I must think of the village as a whole. My power is based on public opinion, and as it is, most people hate her. But you are the leader of this village, said Naruto, who didn't understand how someone who led a village was powerless to help someone like Fu. This was the main reason that he hated politics, since it made an already complicated life even more complex than it had to be, so why not help her? I was only 13 when I was made leader of this village. I was not fully ready to take the position, and the various members of the council took advantage of that fact to take power away from my position. Over the years I have been trying to get it all back, but it has been a tough time doing so. Yet while I could have done it faster than what I have done already, but there was a pressing matter that I had to do that has put me in a mental conundrum that I see no way of fixing. Okay, said Naruto, who after hearing all this began to understand why Shibuki had left Fu like he had since he had so much on his plate. This wouldn't have been an issue if he had just explained it to Fu in the first place. Now I am curious as to what this issue is. For the past few years the councilmen have been trying to implement a new program against my wishes that they are nearly about to pass. The program is to simply use Fu as a breeding tool in hopes that the children she will be forced to bear will have enhanced strength to increase our numbers with more powerful shinobi so as to increase the overall strength of this village as a whole. While I may not be able to visit her as I used to when I was her friend, I won't allow her to suffer such a fate, and have used every trick I could to slow down the process. But the problem there is that the more time I put into aiding her in that way, the longer it takes to reclaim the power lost in my position. Okay, said Naruto through gritted teeth, who are they? I'll kill them myself. No, said Shibuki as he waved his hands to get Naruto's attention, you can't do that. If you really care for Fu as you said you do, said Naruto as he glared at the man, then why stop me from ending the lives of the men who want to rape her? They hate her so much to the point that they force her to live out in the woods and protect them, yet they want her to lie down and take it while they defile her and struggle through multiple pregnancies that will lead to the birth of children that will most likely suffer the same fate as hers. Because even though I hate them for trying to do this, said Shibuki as he slammed his fists on the table in pure anger. A tear fell from his left eye since he truly felt so powerless to help his friend, and it had eaten him up for so many years. He had never gotten the chance to talk to anyone about this, and it was making a lot of repressed emotions surface. They are still high-ranking men in this village that would be truly devastating if they died. I want them gone, truly I do, but I can't since there is no one to replace them if I do. So what then? You are just gonna let it happen? No, said Shibuki as he chuckled a bit, because now that you are here, you have provided me with the perfect answer to my conundrum. Come again, asked Naruto in confusion about what was going on in this man's head. You are someone Fu trusts, said Shibuki, and not only that but one who is not allied to a major village, so I know you won't use her or sell her off to one for money since I have heard you were an honorable man. So I ask of you to take her away from here so that she no longer suffers like she has been forced to do all her life. You do understand the extreme request you are asking me to do here, right? Asked Naruto, who was surprised to hear the man suggest this of all things. By taking a Jinchuriki from a village I will have a high bounty placed upon me from this village. This will lead to many seeking to take me out. I understand the Ramafika. Started Shibuki before he was interrupted. I'll do it, said Naruto simply. His response surprised Shibuki since he had thought that he would have to try harder to convince him to do so, since Naruto had been right to say that the ramifications of doing so would be huge. You will, said Shibuki. Of course, said Naruto, since I help my friends when they are in trouble. But if I do this, I want two things from you. If it is within my power, then I will do it. The first is I want you to write a letter to Fu so that she will understand the reason you left. She at least deserves to know the truth about this. Well, I can easily understand that, and you are right about that. But the second thing I want, said Naruto as he tried to ask in a way that was not too demanding, I have heard that this village has something called Hero's Water. If you are going to ask for our village's most prized resource, said Shibuki, I am gonna stop you there and tell you that I can't give it to you. I don't want all of it, said Naruto with a shake of his head. I just need a syringe full for research purposes. Research purposes? Asked Shibuki. I want to see if there is a way to dilute the chemical compound that gives the drinker a massive boost in power so that you don't die at the end. That's all. Well, said Shibuki as he got up and swiped his hand on a seal on the wall. A secret panel opened up in the wall to reveal the clear glass gourd that was 3/3 of the way full of water that was sealed up with a cork that had wax on the edges to show that the seal was still intact. If it is only a small amount, then it will be okay. He then handed the gourd to Naruto, who pulled out a syringe with a long needle and pierced through the gourd to get at the liquid inside. He made sure to take the utmost care so as to not break the container since it was glass. He then pulled the plunger up so as to extract the liquid for transport. Once the syringe was full, he then extracted it before he put it behind his back and stored it for future research. After he was done with his extraction, he waited for a bit as Shibuki wrote out his letter to Fu. Once he was done, he rolled it up, and then sealed it with a wax seal and handed it to Naruto for him to take to Fu. Please keep her safe, said Shibuki as he still held onto the letter and looked Naruto in the eyes to make sure there was no sort of lying in them. For even though my position does not allow for it, she is still and will always remain my friend. You have my word that she will be alright, said Naruto as he returned the gaze with a serious one of his own, and as you have probably heard from whatever sources that told you about me, I always keep my word once I give it. Well, since our transaction here is done, said Shibuki as he sat down and sighed, then I ask that you leave my village. I would say that I hope we meet again, but after what is going to happen I know that will not happen, so I will simply tell you good luck. You as well, said Naruto as he got ready to leave. Without Fu to worry about, I hope that you can make things right in this village once more. He then summoned up a door that he walked through and disappeared behind him, leaving Shibuki alone with his thoughts. That makes two of us. Naruto arrived back at the area they met the first time to find Fu dressing up her wounds that the shinobi who came to detain him had inflicted. He told her to come with him, for he was here to take her away from all this. She didn't believe him at first, but he then handed her the letter that was written to her by Shibuki. She read it, and as she did, Naruto saw the tears begin to well up in her eyes before they began to fall from them. She cried as the truth was told to her, and Shibuki had told her what would happen if she stayed. That asshole, she finally said weakly, all these years I have hated him for abandoning me. Yet he still cared about me all this time. Why didn't he tell me that to begin with? It wasn't his fault, said Naruto simply. He was forced into his position when his father died, and so it was all so sudden. Just know that he still cared enough to protect you from those who wanted to defile you. So how do we get out of here? And a better question is, where will I go? Well, I have an answer to both those questions, said Naruto as he pulled out another scroll. A while back I got citizenship papers for Spring Country for myself as well as 4 of my friends. Now while I had done that, 2 of them had been killed on a mission they were on, so I had 2 of these to spare, and so you can have one. From there the opportunities open to you are endless. You really think far ahead, don't you? Said Fu with a chuckle as she wiped the tears from her face. Not always, said Naruto with a shrug, but I at least try to. But now that we have established all this and I have offered you a better life away from the hatred of men who I can only refer to as scum, now all you have to do is walk through that door. He said that last bit as he summoned up a door to his operating room. Well, to be honest, it's through this door, a few-minute wait, then through another door. You just killed the mood by saying that last bit, said Fu with a bit of a sweat drop. The way you said it made it feel like a fairy tale of some sort, but then you had to ruin it with reality. Sorry for that, said Naruto with a laugh as he held open the door, but that is kind of my field of expertise. Fu simply chuckled as she walked through the door, followed by Naruto. The next day, Naruto had finally made his way to the Cain residence, and as he made his final approach to the massive residence, he stopped walking for a bit. He had to take a few deep breaths, since his anger had arisen to levels that were not healthy for him, so he needed to calm himself, or else he would give himself away for the plan he had for his former family. Most of what he had planned was already in play as it was, but now all pieces were on the board and he just needed to hit the point home to complete this. Once he was finally calm enough to continue the last bit of the trek towards the front gate, he proceeded to do just that. He made to the gate without any sort of interruption or ambush, but then again no one really came this way since the Cain family were the kind of people to have trespassers killed, and so that made people not want to even come out this way unless they needed to. Naruto reached the gate and pulled the rope, which he had to admit was fairly fancy, which then rung the bell it was attached to. He stood there and waited for someone to arrive. The whole time it pissed him off since the whole setup of this was vain in execution. There were no guards at the front gate, but there were plenty spread around the house itself, leaving the servants' quarters completely unguarded in case of a siege. And to make it worse, those who waited at the front gate were forced to wait, while the one guard in charge of doing so got his arrogant ass up to open it, forcing whoever was there to wait upon them like it was a privilege or something. Naruto honestly wanted to leave, since he could not take all the vanity. But he waited it out since he had the plan he made up and he would stick to it no matter the cost. It had taken 16 years to get to this point, and it would be so worth it in the end when it was all finished. Eventually the guard arrived at the front gate, and demanded to know who he was and why he was here. Naruto growled in response, and told the man who he was and handed the scroll that had been given to him by Zuko back when he had still been in Konoha. The guard looked at it, saw it was genuine, and then opened the gate with the warning to mind his tongue or else he would suffer dearly for it if he did not. The guard then led him along the log road that led to the house, and as he walked by he saw the various fields that the Cain family owned of various trees and fruits. Yet, while the scenery was lush and beautiful, it simply masked the truth of the ones who maintained it. The Cain family were ruthless businessmen. They took great satisfaction in the destruction of competition in such a way that not only did it leave the family who owned those businesses destitute, they would then enslave them as well and force them to work the fields through shady dealings or legal means. Naruto could sense the pain they were in and even saw one such case where a boy that was about a few years younger than himself was beaten by a guard for so much as speaking out of turn. Naruto could only growl in hatred at the darkness that made up his former family, and could only smile inwardly that his mother had left when she did and turned out far better than they had. She died a good person with at least one person in the world to care enough to remember her name, while if the rest of her family died no one would honestly care and would in fact celebrate their demise. Eventually they made it to the room that the head of the household was in, which had multiple medical instruments within it to keep him alive until the heart transplant was complete. The guard ushered him in and threatened him to be on his best behavior, which Naruto implied flipped him the bird since he could care less what threats this man had to make. Naruto had killed so many bandits, missing Nin, as well as several members of the Akatsuki, so he was not afraid of one guard with an ego that had achieved gravitational pull due to its size. Naruto opened the door and went inside to see the man known as Ozai surrounded by a dozen personal doctors as well as his 2 children. Ozai saw him enter the room and ordered the other doctors to leave the room at once. They did as ordered, leaving Naruto alone with the other 3 as well. "So you are the surgeon of death that I have heard so much about," said Ozai in a tone of arrogance. "You don't seem like much." "Well, I could easily say the same for you," said Naruto with a twitchy eye, "you being stuck in a hospital bed like you are." "Listen here, you insolent whelp," Ozai started before he was interrupted. "No, you listen," said Naruto with a simple glare. "You sought me out for my medical expertise, so keep your insults, or your arrogance to yourself, or I will simply walk out that door and not return. And before you think that you can simply order your men to detain me and force me to operate on you, allow me to state that I will kill all who try and feel no remorse about it. Plus, even if you tried to play the political game to make me suffer as I have heard you have done to so many, I am friends with half a dozen daimyos from all over, 3 from major countries with access to shinobi. So let's move on past all the threats and arrogance and get down to business, shall we?" "Fine," said Ozai as he was furious that this peasant dared talk back to him in such a manner. He was actually planning on doing what Naruto stated, But with that many connections he could not do much against Naruto, or else it would spell doom for his family on such a massive political level. So how much do I owe you? Well, that all depends on what needs to be healed, said Naruto as he took a step forward. I will perform a simple physical and tally up what is owed by what needs to be fixed. And how do I know that you won't simply try to bleed me dry of my money by marking up prices? Asked Ozai. He did not get where he was today by letting people get one over on him like that, and he would be damned if he started now. Because my client list is so extensive, explained Naruto as he held up his hands, which were glowing with chakra to perform the physical, I have no need to do such a thing. I make far more than enough with the prices I have set to need to try and cheat someone out of more. It literally pays to be one of the best in the medical field. Fine then. Do what needs to be done so then you can leave sooner, said Ozai. He did not like conversing with those he deemed as commoners, and this brat was one of them. Naruto finished what he was doing, pulled out his price book and wrote out the bill that would need to be paid before he started. Ozai growled since the price was steep and he felt as though the brat should heal him on the fact of his family name alone. But his daughter had told him how he cared not about such thing and simply wanted the money owed. So Ozai called in a butler, one who had served him since he was 5, and told him to go retrieve the funds that Naruto billed him, but not a single cent more. Well, while we wait for that man to return, said Naruto as he stood there with his arms crossed, I have a deal I wish to make with you. And why would I make a deal with one such as you? Because I will half the bill. Those words shocked not only Ozai but his children as well, since they were curious as to what Naruto wanted to do such a thing. Go on. I would like you to answer a few questions I have, said Naruto. You offer my father the means to decrease the amount paid for your services in return for having your questions answered, asked Zuko with a puzzled look on his face since he was confused. Why? Because these are questions that he alone can answer, said Naruto with a passive wave of his hand, and it is because of that fact that gives him leverage. Ask away then, boy, said Ozai, who was happy to do so if it meant he spent less money. Before I ask, I need to explain something, aid Naruto with a sigh. I am an orphan who lost my parents when I was simply 4 years old. Now, while you may not care about that since you have all this going for you with the money and the political power, just go with me on this. But when I felt as though I would die on those streets, I was saved by a young woman who had lost her own child within a few years of his birth since she had not the funds to care for him. She told me that I reminded her of the son she lost and took me in and cared for me. I loved her as a child does their mother, and I was happy. But my happiness was short-lived since she died a year later, and once more I was alone. Once she was put to rest and buried in the ground, I was given the few things she had, one of which was her diary. It was there that I learned who she was and what she struggled to go through to survive. And it is the reason I ask you this question. Why did you abandon your own daughter Mocha when she came to you and begged for aid not only for herself but the child she gave birth to? The looks of shock on their faces were priceless, and it made Naruto wish he had a camera to capture this moment and preserve it forever. They never thought that anyone would ever ask about the forgotten member of their family, and to hear someone ask about her out of the blue like that was unexpected entirely. Why do you wish to know about my pathetic little sister? Asked Azula as she growled at the memory of her. Because that woman saved my life when she had next to nothing for herself, said Naruto with a serious look on his face, and any woman who would do such a thing did not deserve to be treated like she was. So I will repeat the question, why did you abandon her? My former daughter, Ozai said that bit with venom-laced words that seemed like he choked to say them, was a disgrace to the Cain name. She did not act as we did and became a strain on who we were. So I planned to put her to some use as a means to acquire political power via an arranged marriage, but she ran away. I disowned her because she disobeyed my orders to run off with a commoner. And what about the child she came to you for aid about? Asked Naruto. The child was simply born, so what did the child do to warrant such treatment? That child was worthless, said Ozai. He was born out of wedlock via the seed of a commoner, which is of no use to our family. He was an abomination that was undeserving of life, and I will not have something like that in my home. Thank you for answering my questions, said Naruto simply with an emotionless tone of voice. For years he had wanted to know the true reason that he and his mother had suffered, and while he believed the words that came from her diary, but to hear those words spewed from the mouth of the man who cast her out. What was the point of that? Asked Azula, who was still confused as to why he asked those questions in the first place. To slate my own curiosity, said Naruto as he walked over to the door and whipped out a seal. He placed it on the door and activated it, sealing it up so that it could not be opened. What are you doing? Asked Zuko in anger. Making it so we can't be interrupted, said Naruto simply as he held up his hand and whipped it around for a bit. This tangled up Zuko and his sister in wires so as to suspend them in the air as they shouted out their anger at being put in such a situation. What are you doing to my children? Shouted Ozai, who wanted to help them but was unable to since he was stuck in the bed with the tubes in his body. Let them go. You are here to cure me. And now why the hell would I help you? Asked Naruto with a growl. Because that was what you were paid to do, you filthy commoner, shouted Azula as she struggled in vain to try and break free from her bindings. So the high and mighty insult the so-called filthy commoner who has the ability to save them, chuckled Naruto. But I don't want your money. I simply want you to suffer. For what? Demanded Zuko. My mother, said Naruto with a glare. What? Asked all three of them in unison since they were even more confused than they were before. I'm surprised that you have yet to figure it all out, said Naruto with a shake of his head. Apparently money can't buy intelligence since you are all idiots. I am the so-called abomination unworthy of life that you so boldly claimed I was. Impossible, said Ozai as the realization of the situation was starting to sink in. How? I struggled most of my life but I made something of myself no thanks to you, said Naruto as his scowl only deepened further than it already was. And now I have come to make you pay for what you did to me as well as my mother. Unhand us! Shouted Azula, who would not allow the bastard child of her hated little sister to do this to her. Not yet, said Naruto as he walked over to where he saw a bottle of scotch on the table. He took the top off with one hand before he poured himself a glass that he gulped down. His bloody bloodline made it so he could filter out the alcohol in a sense that he didn't get drunk, but he did still enjoy the taste of it when it was finally aged. He had drunk with many of his wealthy customers over the years and had enjoyed the conversations that went along with it when he did. I want to kill you, believe me I do, but I just can't bring myself to do so. And before you ask or even think about it, no, it is not because we are family or any of that nonsense. The reason I stay my hand is that you have not done anything to me directly. You screwed me over as well as my mother, but you have done nothing more to me than ignore my existence, and I can't see that warranting death. If that is the case, then why are you doing this? Asked Ozai as he coughed a bit from the stress the fear of all this was doing to his heart. Because we are simply waiting for the others to arrive, said Naruto as he poured another glass of scotch. You see, what I did was inform the various families who you have screwed over of what I planned to do, and told them to come over and get their pound of flesh from you. See, they have the right to do so since they have been personally screwed over by you with your actions, so it is only fair that they get to end you. Our guards will defend us like they always have, said Azula with an arrogant tone. They wouldn't dare to attack us. They would be killed just for attempting to. True, said Naruto with a smirk, you have hired some of the most ruthless, yet powerful of guards to guard your home over the years. But you see, I did my own research and found a simple way to eliminate that threat. As you know, since you allow it to happen, the majority of them drink the night away once a week. Now you don't really care since they keep your slaves in line as well as guard your house, so it is just a matter of doing business for you. But I learned from a source that spoke of something else they do that day. The maid who they make serve their drinks, they get drunk and then hold her down and rape her. Just her alone, and no one else has to service about 100 men a week all at once because they threatened to kidnap her daughter and force her to take her place if she resisted. How did you know she spoke the truth? Spat out Azula. How can you be certain that she wasn't just another whore? Because I was the one she paid to heal her wounds sustained from the various bouts of rape, said Naruto with a sad shake of his head since he remembered those times, with one of them being so bad that she almost died from it due to the numerous injuries sustained. It had gotten to the point that he healed her for free since she could not keep paying for his treatment, since what he healed was basically renewed within a week or two. The damage done was easily fixed without too much materials needed, so it was not too much of a financial loss for him to do so. As well as performed all 6 of the abortions she had to suffer through since the men used no form of protection nor allowed her to use some form of contraceptive of any sort. So she suffered through all that and tried to hide it from her daughter, yet her daughter was no fool and knew what was happening to her own mother. So I sent the mother a special poison to put into the drinks of the men, and she did so without hesitation. She did what? Demanded Ozai in fear-laced anger. She poisoned them, said Naruto as he pulled out his watch to look at the time, and since I timed my visit just right, at that specific moment they heard the guard who stood outside their door screaming in pain as the poison finally began to do its job and kill the one poisoned. It was a slow-acting poison that made one's body die slowly, yet restricted the muscles so all they could do was scream in agony as the pain lasted a few hours before all vital functions simply shut down entirely. The drawback to using this poison was the fact that it took so long to get to that point, and was easily curable. Until it hit the final stages you just had to know you were poisoned in the first place. These men would not know about the symptoms, and the poison had been slipped into their drinks a few days ago, so he had timed it right and arrived near the end of their lifespan. As they spoke, the various guards all over the estate dropped to their knees in agony, and screamed out in pain as the poison did its work. The front gate was broken through by the massive mob of people who had come to ransack the place and kill the family who took everything from them. It took about 10 minutes for Naruto to finally hear the knock on the door that he told them to use to show that they had arrived. And that sound means that our little reunion is finally at an end, said Naruto as he retracted the wires holding his aunt and uncle up in the air. They fell to the ground and looked at him in fear. Naruto then went over to the door and ripped the seal off before he opened the door to show multiple people standing there with various tools in their hands to use against the Cain family. And now I will leave you three in the hands of the fine capable hands of these gentlemen. No wait, said Ozai in fear, seeing so many faces of people whose lives he had ruined with a smile upon his own while he did it. Protect us. Name your price and we shall pay it. I'm sorry, but I believe you have confused me for some sort of mercenary, said Naruto with a chuckle as he turned his head to look at them without fully turning his body around. But I am not one of those. I am a doctor, sir, and a very good one at that. You can't leave us like this, shouted Ozai in a desperate attempt to play on the brat's humanity. How ironic, said Naruto with a cruel laugh, since you put my mother in a similar situation with her begging for help, and you tossing her out like she was trash. Now here I am not lifting a finger to aid you no matter how hard you beg. Consider this karmic justice. Naruto then walked out of the room as the men rushed in. He heard what obviously was Ozai getting carved open like a cooked turkey along with his son suffering the same fate as his father. Yet Azula was screaming out for them not to touch her, and he heard the rip of her clothes as the men were obviously going to rape the fuck out of her. While Naruto was usually against that sort of thing, he was not going to stop them in this one case, and simply walked back outside past all the various people who were taking anything of value. He had to step over quite a few bodies of guards who were killed, yet all in all he made good time out of the place. While it was true that he wished to kill the three former members of his family with his own two hands, it was not a great idea to put into action once one considered the political backlash. If he had done the deed personally, then the bounty on his head would be massive, with the various daimyos of the nations he was on good terms with being forced to turn him over. His overall reputation would be in shambles, but as it was, it would be seen as people revolting against their oppressors, so he was blameless. If someone were to investigate, and somehow see that they were there, well, he would tell them the truth and explain that he had been hired to heal the man, only to survive the attack on the mansion since people knew who he was and let him go, since killing him would be a waste of talent. All had gone as he had hoped it would, and in his heart he knew that he had avenged his mother by doing so. While he would usually summon a door and teleport home, he was enjoying the serenity of the whole situation and walked towards no particular destination since he has none in mind. Yet, as he walked towards basically nothing, he was stopped by 6 people in black cloaks with red clouds on them. What surprised him was the act that while they were all various sizes, they all had orange hair with purple ring-dyed. Oh, for fuck's sake, said Naruto as he slammed his hand into his forehead with enough force to hear an audible smack from the action. Why do you members of the Akatsuki keep harassing me? I won't join your group, so stop asking. The 6 figures looked at each other for a second before one of them stepped forward. We are not here to try and recruit you into our organization, said the one who came forward. You have made it abundantly clear that you would not work for us when you killed Itachi and his partner Kisame. Then let me guess, said Naruto with a sigh as he whipped out his cane in preparation for a fight that he was certain that was going to happen. You came to avenge your fallen members by killing me. Wrong again, said the one speaking as he shook his head, for their failure was their own. Okay, said Naruto with a quizzical look on his face, so what can I do for you? I require your medical expertise and I am willing to pay what you ask for your services. Naruto could only look at the man with a blank face since this was absolutely the last thing he ever expected to hear. Chapter 8: War's Bloody End. Naruto had remained quiet for most of the trip towards AIM where his client was currently located. He was in such a state since he was still just trying to wrap his head around the one major fact that this was the leader of the group of people he had killed multiple members of within the last several months. If he had been the leader of such a group, he would have been up in arms about avenging them in some way, but this guy didn't seem like he gave two shits about it. That was the reason that this was odd to him, since it didn't make sense to him anyway that he thought about it in his head. But even though that was the case, he still went with the man, since if this all turned out to be an elaborate ambush of some sort as he suspected it would be, well then he would kill off the leader and be done with it once and for all, so their group was no longer a threat to him. Pain, as he called himself, which made Naruto raise an eyebrow the first time he heard it, had told him that his real body was an AIM. When he was told this, Naruto whipped out his elaborate map he had that showed all the different places that he had ever been so that he knew where he could summon his door and save on traveling time, since timing was essential when it came to his profession. Unfortunately for him, he had never been an AIM, but that was mainly due to the fact that they secluded themselves from others for reasons he was unaware of. But then again, that was a shinobi matter, and he was a doctor. He also dealt with an all-kunoichi village that was the same way as well from time to time, but at least that made sense since it was women only, so of course he wouldn't be allowed inside it. He had healed a few of those women in the past, but at a town nearby, since they explained their village's rule of not allowing men into their village, which he fully understood and did not argue with them in the slightest since he had no reason to do so. He saw the closest point to AIM that he had ever been, and summoned a door for himself and Pain to enter so as to enter the operating room before he opened another one to his set destination. Once back in the world, Pain wanted to hurry up, but Naruto had to explain that he was no shinobi, so he did not have the speed that they did, so it would take a bit longer than he was hoping. It was like when shinobi escorted civilians. Pain at first didn't buy that excuse, since if he was truly that slow it should not have been possible to kill 4 separate S-ranked shinobi like he did, along with numerous amounts of other missing nin and bandits like he did. And for what it was worth, Pain was right about that. But Naruto would never let him know this since he was a doctor, and when his opponents faced him they all assumed he was slow and were easily defeated because of their arrogance. That was their first and last mistake in life, since he was far faster than he ever let on. But in the end Pain relented, and it took a day and a half to get to their destination. He was then blindfolded, which he was assured that it was to protect the location of their hideout, which Naruto understood perfectly since this was not the first time such a thing has happened with bandits wanting his help to heal them. Sure, they were bad men, but he healed all who paid him to do so as long as they weren't too evil. Once inside their hideout, he was met with the sight of a man with orange hair and what appeared to be some sort of life support system, but one that he had never seen or even heard of before. With him was a blue-haired woman who introduced herself as Konan. "Sweet merciful Kami," said Naruto with a whistle, "you weren't kidding when you said you needed medical attention. From looks alone you should not even be alive as you are." "Are you able to heal me?" asked Pain as he looked at Naruto with his purple-ringed eyes. Naruto had read up on various dojutsu when he had implanted the Sharingan into himself, mainly to see if there were others that could enhance his eyes even more so as to aid his work as a doctor. Surprisingly, he saw none, but the Rinnegan did interest him for a bit. A lot of the abilities he could use after eating what he learned was called a devil fruit could be done with those eyes. Naruto remembered when he read from Law's journal about devil fruit, and he laughed when he read about the strange weakness of sea water. But he tested it out, and he sank like a fucking rock, so he knew it was true. He was just lucky that his bloodlines and abilities that didn't involve his devil fruit powers were still accessible, or he would have been fucked that day. Plus, since most of the places he went were inland, made his weakness not that much of a factor to worry about. Sure, there was regular water, but it was sea water that was his weakness. "Well," said Naruto as he walked up to the crippled man and looked him over, "that's what we are going to see about now." Naruto then channeled chakra into his hands and began to rub the man all over his body, all under the watchful eye of Konan, of course. Usually when he did this, he saw the damage done within half a minute, but the amount of damage done to this man was far more extensive than he had ever seen any other man suffer through. He was a literal miracle, since for all things based in reality he should be dead as he was, but he was still alive. He would also have added kicking, but the life support system had him locked in place, so that was not truly accurate to state. Naruto had to pull out a scroll and began to write down the long list of things that needed to be fixed, and dear Kami, it was huge. Once Naruto was done with his examination, he began to tally the total amount owed. The number was massive, with only the wealth of a daimyo being able to afford the extensive amount of surgery required, and even then the man would go bankrupt upon the end of the procedure. Naruto sighed as he gave the bill to Konan, since he believed that if Pain saw this, then he would suffer a heart attack from the amount. Hell, the color on Konan's face disappeared as she saw it, and then she began to glare at Naruto. "Do you take us for fools?" demanded Konan as she threw the scroll back at Naruto in rage about the price. "That we would actually pay these clearly marked up prices?" "My prices are set in stone," said Naruto with a shake of his head. "I never mark them up, nor will I ever, since the amount of clients I have makes it so I don't have to." "So then why is the bill so high? Do you fully understand the amount of surgery this man would need to be back in his prime? To walk around without the need of this life support system he is in. This price is all the prices I set in one lump sum. You knew my services were a bit pricey, yet I do what others can't, and that is why you sought me out, so don't stand there and yell at me for showing you the reality of the situation and the price that goes with it." "Can't you give us," started Konan as she took a moment to think of the proper term to use for this given situation, "I don't know, some kind of bulk buy discount?" "I wish I could," said Naruto with a shake of his head, "but I am unable to do so." "And why not?" "Because money is how the world works," said Naruto with a closed-eye sigh, "and nothing in the world is free." "You greedy," seethed Konan before Naruto held up his hand to stop her. "No," said Naruto with a serious tone of voice, "I am not greedy in the slightest." "And how are you not greedy with these prices?" "Because to heal people I need to buy materials to make the various medicines that I use to heal people," said Naruto as he laid it all out in a manner that the two of them would understand him. "My power does not just heal people alone. It just allows me to get to the damage in a manner that no one else can and remove disease or repair what has been damaged. So I need the money to pay for the materials to actually cure the people who I aid. That's how the world works, unfortunately." "There is no way that the materials you need cost so much," said Konan as she crossed her arms and continued to glare at Naruto. "You're right," said Naruto as he pulled out a journal, "they do not. Some are more expensive than others since they are far rarer, but it's true that they don't cost so much. But the reason I charge so much is for another reason altogether." "And what possible reason could you have to charge people such prices like this?" asked Konan. Pain was curious as to the answer as well, but he was weak as he was and let Konan do the talking for him, since so far all she asked was exactly the same things he would if he could do so. "Believe it or not," said Naruto as he handed her his financial journal to look at, "but I have 4 separate accounts in my name. Each of them is used for a different thing, with the largest one I have taking around 85% of what I earn into it. Then there is one that is 10%, one is 4%, and the final one is a measly 1%. This surprised Pain and Konan to hear Naruto openly speak about his finances like this, since most people are far more secretive with theirs so that they were not targets for theft. But then again, Naruto was a target already for his abilities as a doctor already, so it made some sense to them. "Now I know what you are probably thinking," said Naruto as he pulled out his cane and began to lean on it, "that I keep the 85% of it to myself. That is the furthest thing from the truth. That money I use to fund about a dozen separate orphanages all over. And since I support so many, it takes a lot of money to do that." "And why would someone like you give a damn about orphans?" asked Konan in fear that she would not like the answer to the question. Her and Pain, or Nagato as was his real name before he took up the Kurnon Pain, were orphaned in the Third Shinobi War. No one helped them since no one cared about them, so they had to take care of themselves. To hear someone, especially one with such deadly infamy surrounding him, aiding orphans like this made her question his motives on the subject. "You may find this hard to believe given who I am and the fact that I can use abilities that are akin to a bloodline," said Naruto with a chuckle. Everyone kept thinking that his op powers were a bloodline, but they were not. "But I myself am not from a clan of any sort. I was raised by my mother who died when I was only 5, and while I know who my father is, he refuses to acknowledge my existence, so I am an orphan since he would never claim me. Well, at least back then he wouldn't, since now he keeps trying and I tell him to fuck off. But my point is that I know how hard the world can be to those who have lost their families. I also know about those who have all the money, the very same people who have more than they could possibly spend in their lives and yet they don't. But just having money does not make you immune to disease and the like, so I charge these fees to get their money, and help those that the world would not help get them that help, so their lives will turn out better than mine started out. The 10% account is my funds to buy the materials I need to make my medicine. The 4% I save so that one day when I have a family of my own I will be financially prepared for it. Leaving only 1% for myself to use. But why would you limit yourself to such a small amount of money like that? Said Conan as she finished looking at Naruto's financial journal to see that he was telling the truth on his spending. He had gone into elaborate details on exactly what he spent it on. Hell, he mentioned that he just bought a cup of coffee several days ago. He was very thorough with his accounts on spending. Because I was raised poor, said Naruto simply, and yet I was happy since I had a mother to love me. Yet when she died I was distraught. Sure, in time I made tons of money, but the memories of those arrogant pieces of shit from clans with all their money came to my mind, and I realized I did not want to be like that, so I keep my funds to a minimum since the things I want aren't that expensive. Sure, I splurge a bit here and then, like with these clothes since I had them special ordered and a few other things over the years, but I still keep it simple. Be that as it may, said Pain weakly, and hearing his voice let Naruto know just how weak he was. Sure, he had performed the examination, but to hear it in the man's voice really painted the picture of the man's health perfectly. Is there any way to lessen the price? I am sorry to say that there is not, said Naruto with a shake of his head, since the sheer amount of materials needed would drain my reserves and need to be replenished entirely. But I do have a way to heal you that, while expensive as well, is nowhere near the price you just saw. And what is it? Asked Conan with a raised eyebrow. First, said Naruto as he twirled his cane a bit before he grabbed it with both hands behind his back, the procedure is one I keep to myself, since if everyone knew I could do it, then the attempts of capturing me to force me to use it on others would skyrocket. I already have enough on my plate to deal with, so I would prefer not to add even more to it if it can be avoided. So if I am to speak of my own secret, then I must know of your own. So tell me exactly what is it that this organization of yours is up to. Allow me to reassure you that all matters spoken here will remain with me, so there is no fear of me passing on such information to others. Client confidentiality is my specialty. We seek to bring peace to this world, said Pain simply, hoping that Naruto would take it on face value and leave it at that alone. The means of which they planned to do that was something he did not want to discuss, since to those outside their organization it would appear evil and may prevent the man from healing him. A noble cause, said Naruto with a smirk, since he was being honest there. But in such a war-torn world as ours, with all the various shinobi villages about, just how in the hell do you plan to do that? I would rather not discuss such matters, said Pain, not meeting the man's eye. If you wish for me to help you, then you must, said Naruto, since I want to know just who it is I am healing, starting with your true name, since I am fairly sure that your parents did not name you Pain. Fine, said Pain with a sigh. My name is Nagato Uzumaki. Our plan is to use all the Jinchuriki of the world to force all the shinobi villages to stop fighting. Okay, said Naruto as he rubbed his chin. He was surprised to see another Uzumaki up and about, since he heard that only Kushina and her daughter were left. Now, while I agree that sounds fine on paper, but in reality that won't work. And who are you to say that? Asked Conan in anger that Naruto had simply ridiculed their dream. I am a man who is a third party to all of this, said Naruto as he held his hands out to emphasize the point, and I see the world through my own eyes instead of those that show loyalty to a village. I see the way of the world, and I know that people have their pride and that they won't just submit like you want them to. You would be seen as a tyrant, and then the people would rebel against you time and time again until you are either dead, or there is no one left to oppose you, literally, since they will all be dead. And what do you suggest we do then? Asked Nagato with trace amounts of anger in his voice. Naruto was not intimidated by the man in any way, since he was so very weak in his current state. Give up on our dream after we sacrificed so much to make it a reality? To be frank, said Naruto with a sigh, I would say yes to that. But not entirely. Try to make this land into a utopia of sorts, and show the rest of the world the way towards peace instead of shoving it down their throat. That won't work, said Nagato sadly. Well, be that as it may, said Naruto as he twirled his cane once more a bit as he thought on the matter. I will heal you since you answered my question. But I feel like it will be for nothing, since the route you are taking will only lead to the death of many others along with yourself as well. But I am a doctor and I stay out of shinobi affairs since it is not my profession. But like I said, it will still cost quite a bit, just not as much as the normal type of surgery would take. And what is this alternative method you spoke of? Asked Conan. Now bear with me on this one, said Naruto, but I have the means to clone your body. The process takes a bit depending on various variables such as your eyes, for instance. The body is soulless as well as without conscience, so it is an incomplete clone of sorts. And just how does that heal Nagato? I have the ability to transfer the souls of people from one body to another as I please, said Naruto matter-of-factly, and with that ability I can transplant your soul into one that is you in your prime. What you do from there is your business, since like I said I stay out of shinobi matters. For some reason I don't believe you have such powers, said Conan, they just sound too impossible. I knew you would say that, said Naruto with a smirk, as he slammed his cane into the ground and pulled out 2 kunai. He then summoned up a room, which shocked the 2 of them since they had no idea as to what the hell was happening, so they were unaware of the kunai thrown at them. They were pierced through the heart, but they did not die. Shambles. With that their hearts switched places, which shocked them even more since now Conan was in serious pain and Nagato had no idea how to cope with a sudden sex change like this one. So do you still think that it is impossible? Asked Naruto as he pulled out 2 more kunai to reverse the process. No, said Nagato in Conan's body as he waved her hands in a comical way. We believe you, just please fix this. Naruto did as they asked and reversed the process done. So now that you see what I can do, said Naruto as he pulled out a receipt and wrote out the new price, this is the bill for the procedure.